Chapter 898. Breaking through from the astral reaching realm to the Sea of Souls realm was called the mortal transformation pass. After shedding off the mortal body, one would no longer be immortal. Breaking through to the life and death realm would be the life and death pass. Life and death tribulation was merely a general term. It included heavenly thunder tribulation, wind and fire tribulation, and yuan spirit tribulation. Each tribulation had many variations depending on the individual. Once the life and death tribulation descended, a huge hole would be torn open in the third layer of Elysium, and the boundless energy of heaven and earth would bombard the challenger. The black storm was merely an appetizer. It wasn't the official tribulation yet. However, this appetizer wasn't something an ordinary person could withstand. If it were any other ordinary challenger, they would find themselves in a difficult situation. This black storm was aimed at Yi Chen, a test from the heavens for Yi Chen. With Yi Chen's frightening talent, how could the might of the black storm be weak? Life and death tribulation. He's actually starting the tribulation now? How long has it been? The masked man was both startled and furious. He knew how powerful Yi Chen was. Before breaking through, he could already kill Bloodblade King and gravely injure Greybird King. Once he broke through, how terrifying would he be? Perhaps even he wouldn't be able to take him down. I can't let him break through smoothly. A cold light flickered in the masked man's eyes. Come here. With the descent of the life and death tribulation, Yi Chen immediately stored the dream-eating wolf in his beast token. Otherwise, with the dream-eating wolf's cultivation base at the second layer, it would be annihilated by a single shockwave. Putting away the dream-eating wolf, Yi Chen ignored the masked man and focused his gaze on the black storm. Huff 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 huff. The black storm poured down in torrents, tearing numerous fine cracks in the space. These cracks extended unceasingly, eventually surrounding Yi Chen like a spider web. In the next moment, the black storm swept towards Yi Chen. With Yi Chen's eyesight, how could he not see that this black storm was incomparably sharp, as if it was composed of countless small black swords? Even a mountain or a city would be turned into dust by this black storm. Boom! The entire island was instantly swallowed up by the black storm. Yi Chen's figure could no longer be seen. After about 10 breaths of time, the black storm dissipated. When he looked again, there was no island left. The huge island had been completely destroyed. Not even a trace of it could be seen. It had been completely erased from the sea. What a terrifying storm. The protective Jin Yuan outside of Yi Chen's body was flickering. It was a sign that the impact was too powerful, causing the Jin Yuan to fluctuate. It should be known that after Yi Chen had leveled up his Green Lotus sword spell to Heaven Realm, the quality of his Jin Yuan was far beyond normal people. His Jin Yuan circulation speed was also extremely fast. With the two added together, it made his protective Jin Yuan several times stronger than warriors at the same level. Go to hell! The appetizer had just passed, and the first wave of life and death tribulations had yet to arrive. The masked man suddenly made his move, and it was an ultimate move. The splashing thunder and fire burst out toward Yi Chen. Yi Chen sneered and did not dodge. Boom! The sky suddenly lit up, and the whole world was filled with endless light. In almost 1,000th of a blink of an eye, 2 lightning-like thunderbolts struck down. One of them destroyed the masked man's attack, while the other landed on his protective Jin Yuan, not giving him any chance to dodge. Puff! A mouthful of burning blood spurted out, and the masked man was blown back miserably, his body scorched black. Attacking a person going through the tribulation will have to bear the wrath of the world's will. Yi Chen seemed to have known that he would be fine. Activating his undying body, the black scorched skin on the masked man's body disappeared, and he recovered to his normal state. His face was gloomy as he thought to himself, damn it. The worlds will indeed interfere. If I continue to attack without caring about anything, the worlds will send a life and death tribulation to me. Moreover, this life and death tribulation's power will be adjusted according to my strength. Even if I can pass it, my cultivation will be greatly damaged. In the past, although the masked man knew that attacking a person going through the tribulation would provoke the world's will, he had never tried it. This time, Yi Chen was right in front of him, so he decided to take the risk. Good. Life and death tribulation is not that easy to pass, especially the last Yuan spirit tribulation, which directly attacks the soul. The moment the life and death tribulation is over, I will kill you immediately. The masked man gave up on the idea of killing Yi Chen right now. He could not do it. Catcher. The black storm was the appetizer, and the heaven thunder tribulation was the main course. Huge thunder balls descended from the sky, smashing towards Yi Chen. These were not ordinary thunder and lightning, but the heaven thunder tribulation that had been strengthened by the world's will. Its power was unimaginable. Each thunder ball had the destructive power to destroy a city. Die. Yi Chen floated in the sky, waving the evil shattering sword in his hand dozens of times. Sword chi shot up into the sky. Crackle. Thunder balls exploded one after another, filling the sky with electricity. Rumble. After the ball of lightning passed, there was a huge commotion in the world. A mountain-like city made of lightning slowly descended from the spinning black hole. A vast pressure swept out in all directions, and the seawater within 500 kilometers caved in by 100 kilometers. The seawater surged out in all directions, causing tsunamis to appear. The Thunder City was filled with 108 thunder dragons. In the center of the Thunder City, there was an even bigger thunder dragon. This thunder dragon's body was like a mountain, and its scales were bigger than a house. It had a pair of dragon horns that looked like two invincible spears that could pierce through the sky. Black destructive thunder gathered on its horns. The Thunder City's appearance caused a doomsday atmosphere to ripple out for millions of li. The demonic beasts under the sea and the birds in the sky shivered in fear. What? The most powerful thunder tribulation, Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation. The masked man couldn't believe his eyes. This Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation didn't appear at all times. Only the most shocking geniuses would have this treatment. Without exaggeration, the appearance of this Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation indicated that Yi Chen had the chance to become an unparalleled expert, comparable to the ancients. This was because after Yuan Emperor, no one had ever encountered the Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation. Even Xuanho's Thunder Dragon Palace tribulation was a grade lower. The grade of the life and death tribulation was equivalent to telling you the future achievements of the person undergoing the tribulation. Ordinary people who could enjoy the Thunder Dragon Palace tribulation were already peerless geniuses that appeared once in 1,000 years. But if they encountered the Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation, their future achievements would be comparable to the ancients. In other words, Yi Chen had the chance to break the curse of Yuan Emperor and become the first titled monarch to leave a mark on the Emperor Scar Stele after Yuan Emperor. Shock, anger. The masked man's heart was beating very fast. He originally thought that Yi Chen was a genius even more powerful than Xianhu, so he had to get rid of him as soon as possible. How could he have known that he had still underestimated Yi Chen's potential? Yi Chen's potential might be comparable to his since ancient times, but there was absolutely no one above him. If Lord knew that Yi Chen's potential was so great, he might have disregarded everything and personally come to kill him even if he had to face the possibility of being discovered. The masked man quickly thought. Yi Chen didn't have the time to guess what the masked man was thinking, because his mind was currently completely focused on the Thunder City. This Thunder City was even more frightening than the Thunder Dragon Palace tribulation he had to undergo during the mortal transformation pass. This kind of frightening was not only reflected in its might, because the same Thunder Dragon Palace tribulation was different from the life and death pass. The will of heaven and earth and the condensation of energy were completely different. During the mortal transformation pass, the strongest thunder tribulation would be the Thunder Dragon Palace tribulation. But during the life and death pass, the strongest thunder tribulation would be the Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation. The Thunder City slowly pressed down, and the depression of the sea water became deeper and deeper. From 100 li, it became 200 li, 300 li, 500 li. Within the perimeter of millions of li, tsunamis and floodwaters filled the sky. It was as if the end of the world had arrived, and a panic-stricken atmosphere spread out. Too powerful. Is he trying to challenge my limits? Yi Chen thought silently. Break. With the evil shattering sword in his hand, Yi Chen's spirit, qi, and soul had reached their peak. His tall and straight body went against the tide and chopped down on the wall of the Thunder City. Clang! Blazing sparks exploded hundreds of li away. A sword mark appeared on the Thunder City, and after a slight shake, it continued to descend. A horrifying pressure acted on Yi Chen's body, causing Yi Chen's protective Jin Yuan to distort. Congealing water. Seeing that the first sword attack had failed, Yi Chen used his ace attack. The sword power exploded on the city gate, shattering it completely. The sword power roared in the air. Sword dragon art. Congealing water. Bewitching mirror shattering. Even his killing move couldn't do anything to the Thunder City. Yi Chen knew that this Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation wouldn't be easy to pass. He had to go all out and bring out his battle power to the limit. The Sword Snake art required the defensive sword art to reach the level of 33 simultaneous swords, while the Sword Dragon art required 42 simultaneous swords. Above Yi Chen's head, a dazzling semi-extreme grade sword split into 42. The 42 sword shadows combined together and turned into a majestic sword dragon, attacking toward the Thunder City. At the same time, Yi Chen used the evil shattering sword in his left hand and the Sky Scorpio sword in his right, respectively, using his killing moves, congealing water and bewitching mirror shattering. At this very moment, Yi Chen had completely burst out, doing three things at once. Boom! 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 After suffering three killing moves, the Thunder City finally lost its balance and started to sway. Again, Yi Chen used another three killing moves. Clang! The Thunder City was overturned, and the city walls were in tatters. More than half of the 108 Thunder Dragons had been destroyed, and the remaining half had dimmed a lot. Break for me! Yi Chen roared. Sword Dragon art, congealing water, and bewitching mirror shattering landed on the Thunder City for the third time. The berserk energy ripple blasted the Thunder City into a black hole, causing it to dissipate rapidly. It actually blew away the Doomsday Dragon Palace tribulation. The masked man's eyes widened. Normally, the tribulation would succeed 99% of the time. No matter how powerful the tribulation was, since it had descended from the heavens, the probability of passing it was very high. However, it wouldn't be as easy as Yi Chen's. When he was going through his tribulation, he had to slowly whittle away the tribulation's power instead of facing it head-on. Roar! A majestic dragon roar rang out, and yet another city of lightning descended. The masked man almost vomited blood. What? There's more! Chapter 899. Life and Death Calamity consisted of Sky Thunder Calamity, Wind Fire Calamity, and Yuan Spirit Calamity. Sky Thunder Calamity targeted battle power, Wind Fire Calamity targeted will, and Yuan Spirit Calamity targeted soul. Therefore, even though it was only the first calamity, it was not weaker than the other two calamities. The first wave of Doomsday Dragon Palace calamity had already shocked the masked man. Another wave was simply unimaginable. This wave was still the same Doomsday Dragon Palace calamity, but its power was much greater and more frightening than the previous one. The 108 Thunder Dragons seemed to have come to life, their roars resounding and the dragon might spreading out. Boom! The Thunder Dragons shook their heads and wagged their tails, spitting out thunder light towards Yi Chen. The thunder light was as sharp as a heavenly blade, bright and dazzling, appearing in front of Yi Chen in just a flash. Waving the evil shattering sword in his left hand, Yi Chen chopped out one thunder light after another while the Sky Scorpio sword in his right hand shot out a purple sword chi, bombarding the Thunder City, creating a sky full of sparks and purple light rain. Go! With the sword dragon art formed, Yi Chen chopped towards the unceasing Thunder Dragons with a single thought. As the Thunder Dragons were chopped apart, the attacks Yi Chen received became less and less. When all 108 Thunder Dragons disappeared, the Thunder City was already less than 100 li away from Yi Chen. The berserk pressure seemed to want to crush Yi Chen from the inside out, turning him into a meat paste. His protective Jin Yuan flickered, twisting to the extreme. Go back for me. Crossing the two swords, Yi Chen's figure crashed into the Thunder City like a shooting star. With his fifth step spirit body, he dared to withstand the counterforce. Clang! Cracks appeared on the Thunder City, and Yi Chen also spurted out a mouthful of blood. Peng! 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 Again and again, Yi Chen forcefully pushed the Thunder City back into the black hole. However, the moment it was pushed back, the huge thunder dragon in the center of the Thunder City woke up. It raised its head and slightly opened its mouth, shooting out a vast thunder light at Yi Chen's protective Jin Yuan, blowing him away. His skin was charred black and his body was smoking. Yi Chen was struck into the sea. When he emerged from the sea, Yi Chen's pupils shrank. Above his head was a huge lightning dragon. Berserk lightning revolved around it, and black lightning was condensing on the two horns on its head. Doomsday Dragon. Crazy, he's really crazy. There's another tribulation after the Doomsday Dragon Palace. Could it be that he forcefully increased the tribulation's level? The masked man opened his mouth wide and lost the strength to roar. Roar. The Doomsday Dragon was more than 100 miles long. Its mountain-like dragon claw tore through space and grabbed at Yi Chen. The tip of the claw flickered with lightning, containing a lightning force field. TSS 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 TSS. Yi Chen could feel that the water in his body was evaporating, and his skin was becoming dry. The strong electric shock made his hands and feet weak, and his strength was gradually draining away. Sword Dragon Art. With a surge of his soul power, the sword dragon formed by 42 sword shadows charged towards the dragon claw. Clang! Clang! The dragon claw's power was too great. The sword dragon crumbled upon contact, turning into countless broken sword shadows. However, this move also caused the dragon claw to pause for a moment, and the lightning force field had a flaw. Break! With a wave of the Sky Scorpio sword, one of the dragon claw's fingers was cut off. However, the other claws still struck Yi Chen's body. Because the dragon claw was too huge, like a mountain, Yi Chen was almost crushed into the sea. Break again. The resistance of the sea slowed the dragon claw's speed. Yi Chen pushed his sword domain to the limit and cut off the second finger, then the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Swish! The purple crystal on the Sky Scorpio sword expanded, turning into a 10-meter-long amethyst sword. Holding the amethyst sword, Yi Chen cut the dragon claw's palm in half. Breaking out of the water, Yi Chen took the initiative to attack the Doomsday Dragon. The Doomsday Dragon's reaction wasn't fast, and its body was pierced by Yi Chen's sword. However, compared to its huge body, this sword's destructive power was nothing. Its long tail swept out, and Yi Chen couldn't avoid it at all. He was sent flying thousands of li away, spurting out mouthfuls of blood, and his right arm was directly shattered. Too powerful. This Doomsday Dragon should have advanced 2-star battle strength, while I'm only mid 2-star battle strength. If I want to pass this tribulation, I can only exhaust it. It doesn't have an undying body, and losing a part of its body will weaken it. The more it loses, the weaker it will be. As long as I can persevere, it'll be fine. The life and death tribulation was aimed at the challenger, and its power would only be a bit higher than the challenger's battle strength. It couldn't be too abnormal, otherwise, who could pass this tribulation? Of course, because Yi Chen's battle strength was too powerful, the life and death tribulation was also very frightening. Other people's life and death tribulations were a bit more powerful than the challenger's, but his life and death tribulation was much more powerful than the challenger's. Sword chi crisscrossed, and lightning wreaked havoc. Yi Chen and the 100-li-long Doomsday Dragon continued to fight. Everything within 10,000 li was their battlefield, from east to west, from north to south. From afar, the masked man was watching coldly. Pursuing Thunder King, what's going on? Beard King, Iron Arm King, and the heavily injured Greybird King rushed over. His crossing the tribulation. The masked man's title was Pursuing Thunder King. He let out a breath and said slowly, "Crossing tribulation?" Beard King looked over and frowned. What kind of tribulation is this? Why is it so frightening? If I encountered this tribulation back then, I would have died instantly. A tribulation even more frightening than the Doomsday Dragon Palace. The masked man's eyes flickered with a cold light. What? Isn't the Doomsday Dragon Palace the most powerful tribulation among all the lightning tribulations? It has been since ancient times. Beard King, Iron Arm King, and Greybird King turned pale with fright. They already had a bad premonition when they saw Yi Chen's tribulation. Now that Yi Chen's tribulation was this frightening, Wouldn't his future accomplishments be even more frightening? This kid must be eliminated. The masked man said these words coldly. He must be eliminated. Beard King and the other two also said resolutely. When he crosses the Yuan spirit tribulation and his soul is at its weakest, we'll attack together and not give him any chance to struggle. Grey Bird King gnashed his teeth. Rumble. After such a long battle, Yi Chen's Jin Yuan was drained like water. Only 1/10 of his Jin Yuan remained. Fortunately, the Doomsday Dragon's battle power had also fallen from high-grade 2 stars to low-grade 2 stars. It could no longer block Yi Chen's attacks. Another moment passed, and the Doomsday Dragon's body had shrunk to a few dozen li. Its battle power had fallen from 2 stars to 1 star, and then from high-grade 1 star to low-grade 1 star. Poochie. Purple sword radiance blossomed as Yi Chen slashed the Doomsday Dragon apart. I've finally crossed the tribulation. Yi Chen smiled bitterly. He still had a trace of Jin Yuan left in his body. If his Jin Yuan had been exhausted before the Doomsday Dragon was killed, he would have been the one to die. Although the success rate of life and death tribulation was high, there were still cases of failure. Out of 100 people, there would always be 1 or 2 who failed and died. Chapter 900. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen looked up at the sky. After the thunder disaster, it was time for the windfire disaster. The windfire disaster had 2 heavenly tribulations, one external and one internal. The external tribulation was the cutting of the body and the burning of the heavenly fire, while the internal tribulation was the heart demon. Those with weak willpower would not be able to pass through it at all. Of those who failed, half of them died under the windfire disaster, while the other half died under the primordial spirit disaster. The thunder disaster, on the other hand, did not have many casualties. Let me recover my Jin Yuan first. The least worrying thing about passing the life and death disaster was recovering Jin Yuan. The natural Yuan Qi was too rich, especially the black hole that pierced through the 3 heavens, which was simply an energy black hole. The Yuan Qi energy was compressed into a liquid, and then into a solid. As Yi Chen operated his Heaven Realm low-rank martial art, Green Lotus sword spell, the boundless Yuan Qi energy poured down with Yi Chen as the center. Roughly speaking, the density of the Yuan Qi energy in this area was at least 1,000 times higher than the outside world. So cool. Yi Chen had never tried to accumulate Jin Yuan this fast before. The rich Yuan Qi energy did not need to be refined, and became his own Jin Yuan. Moreover, the Jin Yuan that had been used up recovered by 10% in a few breaths' time, then 20%, 30%, 70%, all the way to 100%. Whoosh! Just as Yi Chen was about to recover his Jin Yuan, a bright whirlwind came from the black hole and blew past Yi Chen's body. Poochie poochie poochie. Dozens of bloody wounds appeared on Yi Chen's arms, face, and thighs. Hiss! Yi Chen sucked in a breath of cold air. This whirlwind had completely ignored his protective Jin Yuan and directly blew onto his body. However, its power was not that great, just enough to break through his body's defense. However, that was not the key point. Yi Chen discovered that the place where he had been cut, his nerves of pain had been magnified to the extreme. It was only a small wound, but it made him feel extreme pain. He, who was not mentally prepared, could not help but suck in a breath of air. Activating his undying body, the wounds healed up, but the pain was still spreading. Willpower. It really is a test of willpower. The heavenly lightning tribulation tested one's combat prowess, while the great tribulation of wind and fire tested one's willpower. It wouldn't kill you straight away. Instead, it would make you suffer unbearable pain. Moreover, this was just the first wave. Who knew what kind of tests would come later? It had to be known that pain wasn't the only thing that was unbearable. There were also soreness, spasms, burning, and so on. If one could not withstand the test of the external tribulation, the moment the internal tribulation came, their will would definitely collapse. Then, they would be sliced into pieces and burned to ashes, dying. Since his protective Jin Yuan was useless, Yi Chen simply put it away. Although the external tribulation wouldn't kill him, he still needed to circulate his immortal body to recover from his injuries. Saving as much Jin Yuan as possible was good. Whoosh! Just as the whirlwind blew past, a blazing heavenly fire fell down and burned Yi Chen's body. The might of the heavenly fire wasn't that great, and it could only burn the outer layer of Yi Chen's flesh. However, the pain was amplified by several folds. His body was soreness, burning, and numbness. Yi Chen had turned into a human-shaped torch, enduring all kinds of sufferings and pains that he normally couldn't feel. Hehe, this is just the first wave. When the second and third waves come, he will definitely be in a miserable state. Greybird King didn't think that Yi Chen couldn't pass the great tribulation of wind and fire. However, seeing Yi Chen in such a miserable state was also very satisfying. He wanted to see how miserable Yi Chen would be, suffering all kinds of sufferings and then being killed by us. Nothing is more delightful than this. Beard King also laughed. The second wave is coming. Ironarm King raised his head and looked at the black hole. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. This time, it was a purple gale that gave off a moist feeling, as if it was made of liquid. Even though they were very far away, they could still feel some discomfort on their skin. It's the toxic heavenly wind. The toxic heavenly wind was the most powerful tribulation of the wind tribulation. Being struck by this wind would immediately be poisoned. The poison wouldn't penetrate into the body, but it would cause one's skin to rot and stink. Not to mention experiencing it personally, even watching it would make one's scalp tingle. However, ordinary people couldn't enjoy this tribulation. Only geniuses that appeared once in 1,000 years could enjoy it. The surface of Yi Chen's skin turned purple and black at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, it started to rot. The stink of poison flowed out from the rotten areas, looking extremely disgusting. Frowning slightly, Yi Chen sat cross-legged in the air, his palms tightly gripping his knees. He actually endured it. Beard King was a little incredulous. The wind tribulation he had endured was very ordinary. It was just the cutting of the wind blades, and then the pain nerves were magnified to the limit. Even so, he was sweating profusely and couldn't help but shout a few times. In his opinion, with the terror of the toxic heavenly wind, Yi Chen would surely roar a few times. Could it be that this toxic heavenly wind isn't as scary as the legends say? Beard King reached out and grabbed a few strands of the toxic heavenly wind. Ah! A mournful and shrill sound rang out as Beard King's entire right arm rotted away. And that wasn't all. The pain from the corrosion caused his pain nerves to spasm. This kind of pain wasn't something a human could endure. Only the legendary purgatory would have this kind of pain exist. What a powerful toxic heavenly wind. Greybird King and Ironarm King felt their scalps go numb. How would they dare to provoke the toxic heavenly wind like Beard King? Even the masked man gave up on the idea. Damn it! Circulating the undying body, Beard King's right arm recovered to its original state. However, his face was extremely pale, and there was a trace of fear in the depths of his eyes. When he looked at Yi Chen again, there was a trace of fear and dread in his eyes. He couldn't imagine how Yi Chen could endure this kind of pain. One had to know that the latter's entire body was rotting from the toxic heavenly wind. Is this kid still human? Just as Beard King thought, the suffering Yi Chen was enduring was far beyond imagination. Moreover, he couldn't block this pain at all. He couldn't even divert his attention. This was a test from the heavens. The heavens wouldn't let you pass the wind-fire tribulation so easily. Just as the toxic heavenly wind passed, a stream of fire suddenly poured down from the sky. This stream of fire was extremely dense, like magma, splashing onto Yi Chen's body. It's the heavenly flame stream. The heavenly flame stream was also the most powerful tribulation among the fire tribulations. Sizzle. Magma covered Yi Chen's body. His hair, face, and skin were all burned to ashes. The stream of fire didn't directly burn into his body. Instead, it rubbed against Yi Chen's internal muscles, burning him to the extreme. It was no different from throwing an ordinary person into a pot of boiling oil. Yi Chen's tendons were twitching, and his limbs were spasming. His heart thumping wildly, Yi Chen knew that this pain was bestowed upon him by the world's will. The world's will protected the inside of his body, allowing the outside to bear this heart-wrenching pain. But it was so painful that Yi Chen gradually lost consciousness and started hallucinating. This was a vast and boundless valley. The inside of the valley was like spring all year round, filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers. Occasionally, dragons and phoenixes could be seen flying by, leaving behind sonorous dragon roars and phoenix cries. Listening to them, Yi Chen forgot everything. He forgot that he was in the middle of a tribulation and treated this place as his own world. "Your Excellency, please come in." Guarding the outside of the valley was a group of expressionless god generals with powerful auras. The leader of the god generals gestured with his right hand and invited Yi Chen into the valley with a respectful tone. Yi Chen didn't say anything and just watched coldly from the sidelines. "Your Excellency, the young lady is waiting for you inside. Don't let her wait too long," the god generals continued. After persisting for a while, the god generals saw that Yi Chen didn't move at all and didn't seem to have any intention of entering, so they stopped inviting him and stood respectfully at the side. After a short while, a clear and melodious voice drifted over. "Young Master Yi, why aren't you coming in yet? My young lady has been waiting for you for a long time." 7 natural beauties wearing silk dresses walked out of the valley. Each of them gave off a graceful celestial aura, as if they were fairies. Their bright and beautiful eyes made it hard for others to refuse them. "Let's go, young Master Yi." 2 women ran over and pulled Yi Chen's arms, wanting to pull him in. Scram! Yi Chen released his aura, shaking the few of them away. "You!" The woman who was pushed away had tears rolling down her face, feeling extremely wronged. "Junior brother Yi." Right then, another person walked out of the valley. It was a woman, tall and slim, wearing white robes. She was extremely pretty, and the way she looked at Yi Chen was full of love. It was indeed Xu Jing. "Young lady, he doesn't want to come in. Why bother with him?" The 7 women crowded around Xu Jing. "You really don't want to come in?" Xu Jing asked. A complicated expression flickered in Yi Chen's eyes. He simply closed his eyes to rest. "Forget it. Go find her." Xu Jing let out a sigh and turned to enter the valley. As she turned, a drop of tear fell from her eyes. "Yi Chen, let's go." Not far away, Murong Qingcheng walked over slowly with a pitiful look on her face. "What's real and what's fake? It's always hard to tell. This must be the devil in my heart." Yi Chen suddenly opened his eyes, regaining his clarity. Without looking at Murong Qingcheng, the aura on his body increased immeasurably. That sharp sword aura shattered the whole world, shattering it like a mirror. Break, break, break. After 3 roars, the valley, the divine general, the giant phoenix, and Xu Jing and Murong Qingcheng all disappeared as if they had never existed. The fire was still burning Yi Chen's body. The moment the illusion disappeared, Yi Chen once again entered a purgatory of pain. As he had just come out from the illusion, the pain seemed to have increased tenfold, making him want to die immediately. Fortunately, the heavenly flame stream would eventually come to an end. To others, the wind and fire tribulation might be powerful and terrifying, but Yi Chen's will was extremely strong. The so-called external tribulation and internal tribulation could do nothing to him. This was because Yi Chen's strength came from his will and soul, which were the source of his strength. After the wind and fire tribulation, the primordial spirit tribulation came. What astonished the masked man and the others was that although Yi Chen's primordial spirit tribulation was incomparably frightening and unheard of, Yi Chen felt much more relaxed. Only Yi Chen himself knew that his soul was 5 times stronger than ordinary people, and its quality was comparable to life and death kings. Thus, the primordial spirit tribulation was several times easier than the sky thunder tribulation. Bang! From the black hole, a crystalline river that seemed to be both liquid and solid poured into Yi Chen's body. This was the extremely condensed yuan qi of heaven and earth. After entering his body, it would rapidly transform into King Grade Jin Yuan. With King Grade Jin Yuan, even if Yi Chen didn't have time to improve his profound, his battle power would still increase by many folds. Not good. His soul is not weak at all. Go. The masked man immediately made a decision and dove into the void. Before breaking through, Yi Chen already had mid-2-star battle power. Once he broke through, he would be even more terrifying. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of Yi Chen's weakened soul to kill him. But now, It seemed like it was just their wishful thinking. Chapter 901. You think you can escape? Yi Chen's body had already produced King Grade Jin Yuan. Although it wasn't much, it was enough for him to swing a few times. Seeing the masked man and the other three trying to escape, Yi Chen pulled out the Sky Scorpio sword and attacked with the bewitching mirror shattering. Buzz! The masked man and the other three, who had already escaped into the void, were forcibly swept out and sealed inside the purple mirror. With the support of King Grade Jin Yuan, the bewitching mirror shattering finally displayed the true power of Space Profound. Even the masked man with 3-star battle strength couldn't escape. Catcher! The purple mirror shattered. Apart from the masked man, the other three were instantly killed. The masked man didn't have a good time either. His body was drenched in blood, and one of his arms and left leg had been shredded into a bloody mist by countless spatial fragments. Run! The masked man was incomparably shocked. Yi Chen's battle strength was even more powerful than he had imagined. Even escaping into the void had been flipped over, so how could he be his opponent? The lightning flame on his body exploded as the masked man turned into lightning flame and escaped into the void once again. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Just what's wrong? Killing Beard King, Iron Arm King, and Greybird King with a single sword and heavily injuring the masked man, Yi Chen didn't feel anything at all. He felt that he had missed something important, something even more important than killing the masked man. Therefore, when the masked man escaped, he didn't chase after him. Instead, he pondered. There's nothing wrong with killing them. Then what happened before this? What was wrong before this? Right, before this, I was going through tribulation. But why is it that apart from the lightning tribulation and the first half of the wind and fire tribulation, all the other details are so blurry that I can't remember anything? I only know that I succeeded. Missing details? I can sense the details of the tribulation, but I don't have any. The will of the world can imitate other things, but it can't imitate me, because it isn't me. It can only trigger it based on the information in my heart. How can I not have any comprehension of the tribulation of wind and fire and the Yuan spirit tribulation? Heart devil. A light flashed in his mind as he opened his mouth and roared. Rumble. His soul sea surged, and Yi Chen woke up. Ouch. The first thing he felt was pain, a very real pain. At this moment, he was still going through his fire tribulation, heaven flame flow. His body was wrapped in an extremely condensed flame flow, which rubbed against his muscles and stimulated his pain nerves. Releasing his soul power, Yi Chen could clearly sense that the masked man and the other three were still alive, staring at him coldly. What a terrifying heart demon. Yi Chen could not help but feel his scalp tingle. Other people's inner demons only had one layer, but his inner demon actually had 2 layers. After breaking through the first layer, there was still another layer outside. Most people would slightly relax after overcoming the inner demon, and it was precisely this slight relaxation that allowed the inner demon to take advantage of the weakness and enter, making it hard for Yi Chen to distinguish between the real and the fake. If it wasn't for the fact that Yi Chen's willpower was firm enough to maintain a bit of divine light from beginning to end, the second layer of his inner demons would have consigned him to eternal damnation and burned him into ashes by the tribulation of wind and fire. Terrifying. Compared to the doomsday dragon in the sky thunder tribulation, the inner demons of the wind and fire tribulation didn't have any visual effects. Outsiders couldn't see through it at all, but it was 10 times more dangerous. Even Yi Chen had almost died from it. If it were someone else, they would have already fallen. Thinking about it carefully, Yi Chen felt that he had already been invaded by the inner demons when he was unconscious. Even the poisonous heaven wind couldn't make him unconscious, and the pain from the heaven flame flow was only a little bit worse than the poisonous heaven wind. How could it make him unconscious? It was most likely that this unconscious state was imposed on him by the will of the world. Only when he was unconscious would he wake up. After waking up, it would be when the second layer of the inner demons would start to wreak havoc. It was like a psychological lure, luring him into thinking that he had woken up, when in fact, he was still in an illusion. Could this still be an illusion? A thought suddenly popped into Yi Chen's mind. It seems like my heart is in a mess. The second layer of the inner demons has made me a frightened bird. As long as my will is firm and consistent, it doesn't matter if it's an inner demon or not. What's real and what's fake? Everything is a result of the changes in the outside world. As long as my body doesn't change, the inner demons won't be able to take advantage of it. Smiling bitterly, Yi Chen calmed down. His expression was calm, and even the pain on his body seemed to have faded a lot. His state of mind had been greatly improved due to the inner demons. The test of the will of the world had accelerated his growth. Of course, other tribulation takers would also have some growth, just not as much as him. What a terrifying will. The masked man could still see Yi Chen's body convulsing and trembling before, but now, Yi Chen's body had actually relaxed. Pursuing Thunder King, do you think he has passed the inner demon tribulation? Beard King asked. I'm afraid he has. The masked man answered subconsciously. The wind and fire tribulation is divided into internal and external tribulations. The external tribulation complements the internal tribulation. The pain produced by the external tribulation makes it easier for the inner demons to invade. I wonder how strong his inner demon tribulation is. Beard King and the other two were clear that the external tribulation was only this much. What was truly frightening was the inner demon tribulation. Given Yi Chen's talent and potential, the inner demon tribulation was at least at the highest level. There was a high chance that he had surpassed the highest level and raised the inner demon tribulation by another level. Of course, outsiders couldn't see through the inner demon tribulation, so they didn't know what kind of inner demon Yi Chen had encountered. The fire gradually died out and dispersed. The burnt surface of Yi Chen's body gradually shed off, growing new skin. At this point, he had passed the wind and fire great calamity, and only the last calamity was left, the Yuan spirit calamity. Heavily exhaling, Yi Chen opened his eyes and looked at the masked man and the other three. This glance was extremely calm, without any killing intent or other emotions. However, this glance made the hearts of the masked man and the other three twitch. At this moment, they even felt as if they couldn't breathe. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed their hearts and fiercely squeezed them, not allowing them to beat. What a frightening glance this was. Will suppression. The masked man's face turned gloomy as he slowly spat out a word. Life and Death Kings had truly grasped the wondrous usage of will. The same martial will exerted by a Life and Death King and a martial artist under Life and Death Realm would have a completely different effect. The latter simply couldn't perfectly utilize the suppression of martial will, and could only instinctively release it. On the other hand, Life and Death Kings could concentrate their will even more, giving rise to a frightening pressure. Although Yi Chen wasn't a Life and Death King, he had passed the inner demon tribulation of wind and fire tribulation. His control over will had already reached the level of Life and Death Realm. No, it might be even more frightening. This was because other peak kings couldn't give him such a powerful pressure. This glance seemed to decide their life and death. Chapter 902. What a frightening gaze. The masked man was a bit better off, but Beard King and the other two felt their hearts clench and their bodies stiffen. If Yi Chen were to attack at this moment, they might not even be able to withstand a single exchange. In terms of willpower, the disparity between them and Yi Chen was simply too great. Among them, Beard King's willpower was slightly higher, but it was only at mid-5th step. Greybird King and Ironarm King only had peak 4th step willpower. Meanwhile, Yi Chen's destruction sword intent had reached the 6th step, which was equivalent to an ordinary 7th step sword intent. How could he endure this seemingly ordinary but actually incomparably tyrannical willpower? Chasing Thunder King. This kid is a bit strange. Greybird King had a trace of retreating. Yi Chen had yet to formally step into Life and Death Realm, yet he could already utilize willpower to such a frightening degree. Once he reached Life and Death Realm, he would be even more terrifying. A single gaze from the other party would probably be enough to paralyze his body. He is a bit strange, but he still hasn't crossed his primordial spirit tribulation. In truth, Beard King also had a bad premonition. However, with chasing Thunder King here, he felt that Yi Chen didn't have much hope. It should be known that chasing Thunder King's battle strength had reached mid 3-star realm. Moreover, He was at the peak of mid-3-star realm. Adding the three of them together, they could barely contend against a high 3-star king. Beard King is right. Since ancient times, the souls of those undergoing primordial spirit tribulation have always weakened for a period of time. The moment his soul weakens, the four of us can unleash our killing moves. We can certainly kill him. Iron King was a body-refining king, and his boldness was the strongest. Although Yi Chen's gaze made his heart clench and his body stiffen, he didn't think of retreating. Alright, our mission this time is to kill Yi Chen. If Yi Chen isn't killed, how are we supposed to hand in the mission when we return? Moreover, judging from his life and death tribulation's momentum, once he enters life and death realm, his battle strength will not be any weaker than mine, perhaps even above mine. At that time, he will be a huge problem comparable to Xian Hu. The masked man said coldly. Yi Chen didn't know what the four were thinking, but he didn't care. Retracting his gaze, he inwardly thought, life and death realm, one already has a certain understanding of life and death. Their control over will is several times stronger than before. No wonder, although body-refining kings are powerful, they are still a bit weaker than kings with powerful wills. Transcending the life and death tribulation would definitely give one enlightenment and improve in all aspects. When the heart demon invaded him, it was because of this that Yi Chen was able to defeat it in the end. The primordial soul tribulation is coming. A frightening pressure was emitted from the black hole, causing Yi Chen to raise his head involuntarily. Life and death tribulations were of equal strength. However, in terms of danger, the heart demon tribulation of the wind and fire tribulation was extremely dangerous, and the Yuan spirit tribulation was even more dangerous. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause one's soul to be heavily injured, and it would take a very long time to recover. This was also the reason why many people who had clearly passed the life and death tribulation would still have extremely weak souls and poor mental states. Huff huff huff. A whirlwind blew down, but it was not an ordinary whirlwind. Only the soul could hear it, and it was the prelude of the Yuan spirit tribulation, soul whirlwind. The soul whirlwind was extremely fast, and it brushed past Yi Chen's body. Yi Chen's expression was calm, as if nothing had happened to him. If a mere soul whirlwind could put him in such a difficult situation, then there was no need for him to transcend the Yuan spirit tribulation. Quite a powerful soul membrane, the masked man coldly snorted. When he encountered the soul whirlwind, he would at least frown, but Yi Chen didn't even frown. It was as if a gentle breeze had brushed past his face. After the soul whirlwind comes the soul storm. Let's see if he can still remain indifferent. Greybird King's previous intention of retreating made him somewhat embarrassed, so he deliberately expressed his disdain. Rumble. The soul storm's momentum was much stronger than the soul whirlwind. The rumbling sound of the storm directly reached the depths of the 5 souls. Compared to the soul storm of other tribulation transcenders, the one Yi Chen encountered was much more terrifying. Yi Chen originally wasn't afraid of this soul storm, but when he noticed Greybird King's expression, an idea popped up in his mind. The soul storm swept Yi Chen into it, constantly battering against Yi Chen's soul membrane. Every breath of time, there would be hundreds of battering, like waves crashing against the shore. Suddenly, Yi Chen groaned, and his complexion turned slightly pale. Haha, he really can't withstand the soul storm's impact. Greybird King laughed proudly. As the soul storm's might grew stronger, Yi Chen's complexion turned paler. In the end, his brows were furrowed, and his eyes flickered. After a long time, the soul storm dissipated, and cold sweat appeared on Yi Chen's forehead. This time, it's in the bag. Beard King and Iron King felt much more relaxed. Previously, Yi Chen's gaze was too terrifying, causing them to feel a trace of fear. But now, that fear had vanished. Is this kid faking it? The masked man had his doubts. Yi Chen's soul storm was indeed several times stronger than the other tribulation transcenders, but he still felt something was wrong. Yuan divinity tribulation usually had 3 waves of attacks. After the soul whirlwind and soul storm, the most powerful attack came. Kill. A soul warrior formed entirely from souls raised a super machete and charged at Yi Chen. Before the figure arrived, the machete had already slashed down. It was a soul saber chi. Yi Chen didn't move, allowing the soul saber chi to slash at his soul membrane. He didn't have any soul defense secret art. Apart from his innate ability, he didn't know any soul attack secret arts. Thus, he could only rely on his soul membrane to resist the attack. Clang. Invisible sparks flew outside the soul membrane. Amazing. Yi Chen felt a ripple on his soul membrane. Kill. 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 The soul warrior released 3 saber chi in a row, attacking Yi Chen's soul from 3 different angles. Soul storm. Although he didn't have any soul attack secret arts, it didn't mean that Yi Chen had to endure it passively. Above his soul sea, waves surged. Waves of soul power swept out in the form of a vortex. This was the authentic soul storm. His perception was extremely strong. The soul storm in Yuan Divinity Tribulation allowed him to grasp the method to cast soul storm. Although it wasn't as perfect as the soul storm in Yuan Divinity Tribulation, he had mastered it and didn't deviate from the right path. Boom. 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 When the soul saber chi encountered the soul storm, its power was rapidly reduced. When it slashed at Yi Chen's soul membrane, it didn't even have a tenth of its original strength. It wasn't even qualified to shake Yi Chen. However, Yi Chen still pretended that he couldn't bear it. His face was pale and bloodless, and his mental state was greatly reduced. Seeing that the soul saber chi couldn't do anything to Yi Chen, the soul warrior approached and prepared to use the machete to attack Yi Chen at close range. How troublesome. Yi Chen frowned and executed the soul storm again. The soul warrior didn't have any thoughts. How could it know that attacking Yi Chen at close range would only make it easier for Yi Chen? The soul storm's attack made him sway and he couldn't stabilize his body. His body formed by his soul was also gradually thinning. Now, he had to check out and change hotels. There was no time to continue. Chapter 903. Scatter. Yi Chen let out a low roar, and even more soul power gushed out like a tornado, blasting toward the soul warrior. A powerful soul pressure suppressed the opponent, rendering it immobile. Kai 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 kai. The soul battle general was cut into many fine soul threads. Its body became more and more transparent, thinner and thinner. Finally, with a boom, it dissipated. He can even use soul storm so skillfully. Iron Arm King sucked in a breath of cold air. The majority of life and death kings could use soul storm, but those who could cultivate it to greater success could be counted with 2 hands. The majority of them were at minor success. Iron Arm King was a body-refining king, but his talent in soul was not too high. Therefore, his soul storm was far from reaching minor success. But now, looking at Yi Chen's appearance, he was clearly close to minor success. Don't worry, his soul was already injured before. Forcibly using soul storm now might look easy, but it should have worsened his injuries. I just don't know how deep his injuries are. Beard King analyzed. How deep the injuries are doesn't matter. There's still another wave coming. The masked man sensed something and raised his head toward the black hole. 4th wave. Beard King and the other 2 also raised their heads. Kill. A deep voice resounded from the depths of the black hole, reverberating between heaven and earth. Kill. The second kill word was much clearer, and its might was also much greater. As soon as the word appeared, a frightening soul pressure frantically surged out like the wind of hell. Kill. 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 Immediately after, the 3 kill words were shouted one after another, and the soul pressure increased by several folds. Apart from the masked man, Beard King and the other 2 groaned and retreated several steps. This kid is indeed a freak. Of the 3 life and death tribulations, apart from the wind and fire tribulation, the others have all improved. What kind of tribulation will this 4th wave be? The 3 couldn't help but wonder. Buzz. In the depths of the black hole, an incorporeal ripple appeared, and a figure wearing a shabby cloak and with tattered skin appeared. It's a primordial slaughter king, the masked man blurted out, his voice filled with alarm. A primordial killer king? Could it be a ferocious creature from the soul prison? Greybird King was flabbergasted. The masked man shook his head. The soul prison is most likely fake. I've heard from the Lord that after people die, their soul auras will spread out. Although these soul auras don't have intelligence and are muddle-headed, they still have a trace of instinct. Countless soul auras from different sources will fuse together in a special environment and form the primordial spirit. The primordial spirit is extremely brutal and irrational. Wherever it goes, any living creature with a soul will have its soul sucked dry by it to replenish itself. When the primordial spirit is strong enough, it will become an extremely terrifying primordial spirit killer king. The primordial spirit killer king already has its own special intelligence and innately knows many kinds of soul attack secret techniques. The blood devil was born from a large amount of fresh blood, while the primordial killer king was born from a large amount of soul aura. Both of them were unnatural existences. Since it's a primordial killer king, isn't this kid dead for sure? Grey Bird King's face lit up as he asked. No. The masked man sized up the primordial killer king and said, the more stitches on the primordial killer king's body, the stronger it is. The stitches on this primordial killer king's body are faintly discernible, so it should be a newborn primordial killer king. However, it will be enough for him to suffer. Even if he survives, his soul will be weakened to the freezing point. The masked man sneered. He didn't expect that Yi Chen's primordial spirit tribulation would encounter the legendary primordial killer king. Primordial killer king. According to the Battle King's memories, Yi Chen could guess the origin of this figure. The primordial killer king was formed from the fusion of countless soul auras. Moreover, it had gathered the negative emotions of countless soul auras. There was no logic to it. Once it was born, it would slaughter the world and absorb the souls of countless living beings. Kill. The primordial killer king's weapon was a similarly tattered stone rod that seemed to have been patched up. Soul auras lingered on the stone rod, and countless people were howling miserably. Just listening to this sound would give rise to fear. With a flicker, the primordial killer king wielded the tattered stone rod and smashed it at Yi Chen. Yi Chen's expression turned solemn as he executed the soul storm. Fart. Fart. Layers of soul auras were blasted away by the stone rod. The primordial killer king only absorbed soul auras that hadn't been rearranged, so it couldn't absorb the soul storm. Again, Yi Chen executed the soul storm once more. Boom. This time, the primordial killer king was obstructed and staggered. What made Yi Chen frown was that the primordial killer king's soul aura was only weakened by less than 1%. In other words, even if he executed the soul storm 200 times, he still wouldn't be able to kill the opponent and survive this tribulation. If a simple soul storm doesn't work, then what about the destruction soul storm? Yi Chen increased the distance between him and the primordial killer king as the third soul storm was formed. This soul storm contained not only soul power but also the destruction sword intent. One should know that intent could also harm souls, but it was not as direct as soul attacks. Moreover, Yi Chen's destruction sword intent was not an ordinary one, but the destruction sword intent. It was extremely destructive to souls. In this world, there was almost nothing that the destruction sword intent could not harm. Fart. How could the primordial killer king dodge the destruction soul storm? It was hit directly, and its soul aura dispersed rapidly, disappearing by about 10%. It's effective indeed. This was the first time Yi Chen faced the legendary primordial killer king, so he wasn't too confident. Since the destruction soul storm was effective, Yi Chen would naturally use it to attack the primordial killer king. The Yuan divinity slayer king was forced back. Suddenly, he let out a low roar, and a ball of soul power spread out from his body, forming a soul ring. The destructive soul storm collided with the soul ring and was instantly neutralized. The soul aura he lost was only half of what it had been before. Kill. With the soul halo protecting its body, the primordial killer king raised the shabby stone staff high in the air and chopped down. This is a soul attack secret art. Yi Chen's eyes narrowed. Within his soul perception, countless soul staff phantoms hacked over, each of them carrying an intense vibration power. It was just like Lan Sanmei's demonic blade arts and Yi Chen's vibration sword arts. The only difference was that the primordial killer king used soul power, and its destructive power was frightening. I can't be hit. Even if Yi Chen's soul power was 5 times that of ordinary people, and its quality was not inferior to Life and Death King's, he still didn't dare to face this soul attack of the primordial killer king head-on. Immortal Soul Storm. If the Destruction Soul Storm was an attack, then the Immortal Soul Storm revolved around Yi Chen's body, protecting him. Any soul attack would have to consume several times the power. When the Immortal Soul Storm was dispersed, the Soul Staff Phantom's might was reduced to 30%. Naturally, it couldn't do anything to Yi Chen, and was directly blocked by the soul membrane. Consume his soul aura first. In fact, Yi Chen also had a trump card, Soul Light. However, he could only use it twice, and each time was more precious than the last. Therefore, he couldn't use it right now. He would wait until the primordial killer king's soul aura was more or less depleted. If he used Soul Light first, his soul power would be reduced by half, and if he couldn't kill his opponent, he could only wait for death. Bang bang bang! Yi Chen retaliated with the Destruction Soul Storm, while the Immortal Soul Storm protected him. The primordial killer king used all kinds of soul attack secret arts, and the soul halo protected its body. The intense battle between the two turned into a protracted one. How is this possible? Beard King and the rest were dumbstruck. Let's continue watching. His soul power has been consumed quite a bit. The masked man was much calmer. Yi Chen had been using the soul storm for a long time, so his consumption was bound to be fast. 60%, 50%, 40%. Almost there. Yi Chen silently calculated the primordial killer king's soul aura. When the opponent's soul aura was less than 40%, Yi Chen brazenly unleashed his trump card. A slit appeared on his forehead, and a vertical silver eye opened, shooting out a silver beam. The silver beam was the result of soul power rearranging and compressing it to the extreme. It instantly struck the primordial killer king's chest. Kai Kai. Like winter snow encountering summer, the primordial killer king's body melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its soul aura also rapidly weakened. 30%, 20%, 10%, 5%. In the end, only a trace of the primordial killer king's soul aura remained. Let's end this. There was no need to use Soul Light or Soul Storm. Yi Chen directly shot out a destruction sword intent, slashing the primordial killer king's body. Poochie. The primordial killer king dissipated, returning to nothingness. His primordial spirit tribulation was a success. As soon as the primordial killer king was destroyed, the black hole that pierced through the 3 layers of sky had a huge movement. It started to revolve crazily, condensing an extremely pure Yuan Qi sphere. This Yuan Qi sphere contained too much energy. According to Yi Chen's estimation, as long as he could absorb it all into his body, he would have at least 80 to 90 years of cultivation base. Moreover, he would have the cultivation base of a life and death king, which was equivalent to King Grade-Jin Yuan. However, the biggest change was not the black hole, but Yi Chen's body. His sea of soul was surging, and its color was gradually turning golden, resembling a light golden ocean. The Destruction Sword Soul and Immortal Sword Soul floating above his sea of soul seemed to have received a huge nourishment, and their tempering effects were far greater than before. If the speed before was 1, it was now at least 3. My soul power is increasing. Yi Chen could feel that the depth of his sea of soul had become even deeper. Under ordinary circumstances, one's soul power would increase by roughly 10 times upon entering life and death realm. However, Yi Chen's soul power had already increased by more than 10 times, and was advancing towards 15 times. Judging from the speed, it seemed like 15 times wasn't the limit. 14 times. 15 times. 16 times. His soul power continued to advance, reaching 19 times. Then 20 times. It only stopped after a total of 20 times. In other words, even if Yi Chen's soul power was the same as an ordinary person's before, with the increase of 20 times for him and 10 times for others, his soul power had doubled. Previously, his soul power was 5 times that of ordinary people, but now, it was 10 times. Chapter 904. 10 times the soul power of a life and death king was an extremely frightening thing. At Sea of Soul Realm, one's soul power could spread out to 100 li. At Life and Death Realm, one's soul power could increase by 10 times, reaching 1,000 li. In fact, Life and Death Kings had an extremely powerful control over their soul power, allowing them to extend their soul power to a range of 10,000 li. However, the limit of Yi Chen's soul power was 10 times that of a Life and Death King's, which was 100,000 li. And this was only an ordinary method of releasing soul power. Everyone knew it. If one used some soul-related secret arts, the range of one's soul power would increase by several folds. For ordinary Life and Death Kings, the range of their soul power reaching 100,000 li was nothing shocking. If Yi Chen learned a soul amplification secret art, the range of his soul power could easily exceed 1,000,000 li. With a single thought, not even the slightest movement of a blade of grass in 1,000,000 li could escape his eyes. The range of his soul power was only a small matter. After his soul transformed into a Life and Death soul, the soul eye's ability had also greatly increased. Before, Yi Chen could only see everything within 10 million li with his soul eye. Even Life and Death Kings would find it hard to detect him. But now, everything within 1,000,000,000 li could be seen by Yi Chen. I wonder how many times I can use soul light with my current soul power, and to what extent will its might reach. With his soul power increasing by 10 times, he would be able to use soul light more than twice, and its might wouldn't be stagnant either. Kill. Seeing that Yi Chen had passed the Life and Death calamity, the masked man's eyes surged with killing intent. He slapped at Yi Chen from a distance, erupting with 4 layers of thunder fire palm power. Merak hammer kill, gale chop, iron arm critical strike. Beard King, Greybird King, and Iron Arm King also used their trump cards, attacking Yi Chen together. This time, they would not give Yi Chen a chance to turn the tables. Facing the 4's joint attack, Yi Chen didn't dodge. The vertical eye on his forehead first shot a silver beam at the masked man. This silver beam was several times stronger than the one he had used against Primordial Slaughter King. As soon as it appeared, it was like a sharp silver blade stabbing into the masked man's sea of soul. At the same time, Yi Chen unsheathed the evil vanquishing sword with his left hand and blocked Beard King's spinning hammer light. His right hand gripped the Sky Scorpio sword and stabbed at the masked man's 4-layered palm energy. As for Greybird King and Iron Arm King's attacks, Yi Chen couldn't dodge and could only receive them with his body. Ah! Bang! Bang! Puff! The first to suffer was the masked man. Facing Yi Chen's soul light, a small portion of his soul sea collapsed. The pain that came from the depths of his soul made him scream. It was as if he had gone mad. Beard King's spinning hammer light was blocked by Yi Chen, but the masked man's 4-layered palm energy forcibly broke through Yi Chen's sword energy and landed on his body. Blood splattered as lightning and fire splashed in all directions. As for Greybird King and Iron Arm King's attacks, Yi Chen couldn't dodge in time and landed on his body. His bronze armor wailed as half of Yi Chen's body turned into a bloody mist. If Yi Chen was still in the Limb Rebirth realm, he would have died without a doubt. Unfortunately, at the critical moment, the Yuan Qi ball in the black hole began to pour a majestic Yuan Qi into Yi Chen's body. Not only did it increase Yi Chen's Jin Yuan, it also allowed Yi Chen's undying body to evolve. From the initial Limb Rebirth realm, Yi Chen advanced by leaps and bounds. In just a short while, he had reached the peak of Limb Rebirth realm, and in the next instant, he broke through to the initial flesh derivation realm. As his flesh wriggled, the half of Yi Chen's body rapidly recovered. However, the newly born Jin Yuan in Yi Chen's body was immediately exhausted. Fortunately, the Yuan Qi ball contained a vast amount of Yuan Qi. Just now, he had only poured less than 1/10 of Yuan Qi into Yi Chen's body. The rest of the Yuan Qi continued to pour into Yi Chen's body. A soul light actually consumed 1/5 of my soul power. My soul power has increased by 20-fold. Yi Chen found it a little unbelievable. But fortunately, the soul light's might has become even more terrifying. The masked man possessed 3-star battle prowess, but a soul light had injured the origin of his soul. It would be extremely difficult for him to completely recover, and his future battle prowess would be greatly reduced. It would already be good if he could have 60 to 70% of his soul power left. After all, an injury to the soul and an injury to the origin of the soul were two different things. The former could recover on its own, but it would take a longer time. The latter, on the other hand, couldn't be recovered by oneself. One could only rely on some peerless treasures to nourish the soul. However, such treasures might not be found even if one searched the entire Elysium. It could be said that Yi Chen's soul light had nearly destroyed the masked man. With only 60 to 70% of his battle prowess left, the masked man's strength was probably only at the low level of 3-star, not much stronger than Copper Sword King. Apart from that, although the soul light didn't kill the masked man, its effect was too terrifying. Yi Chen didn't only have soul attacks. His battle prowess was even higher than soul attacks. Once his soul was injured, how could the masked man resist a frontal attack from Yi Chen? Impossible. His soul isn't weak at all. Greybird King's eyes widened. We've been tricked by him. He must have done it on purpose to catch all of us in one fell swoop. Beard King clenched his teeth. If Yi Chen's soul was weak, it would be impossible for him to use such a powerful soul attack. It was just like forcing a weak person to run was impossible. Moreover, with a weak soul, one's condition would drop drastically. However, Yi Chen could block Beard King's all-out attack and counteract more than half of the masked man's four-lead palm energy. This was enough to prove that his condition had not declined at all. On the contrary, it was getting better and better. Gu. The Yuan Qi in the Yuan ball turned into a river of sparkling and translucent light, pouring into his body through the top of his head and rapidly transforming into King Greijin Yuan. As the amount of King Greijin Yuan in his body increased, he could feel that he had already become powerful enough to tear the space with his bare hands. Raising his right index and middle fingers, Yi Chen suddenly pointed at Greybird King's forehead. Powerful King Greijin Yuan combined with the 6-step destruction sword intent gushed out. Puff! Greybird King's pupils slackened, and a bloody hole appeared on his forehead. It was so deep that one could even see the back of his head. One finger, and Greybird King was dead. Too strong. Not only did Beard King want to retreat, even the powerful Iron Arm King lost the confidence to fight against Yi Chen. At this moment, Yi Chen was no longer the Yi Chen of before. The previous Yi Chen was merely a super genius who had yet to mature. Although he was frightening and had strength comparable to them, they at least had a chance to kill him. But now, Yi Chen had stepped into life and death realm. Killing him would be as difficult as ascending the heavens. Being able to escape alive would already be a pretty good result. Run! Beard King and Iron Arm King tore space apart, their speed exploding to the limit. If I let you guys escape, wouldn't my acting have been in vain? Yi Chen sneered. The evil vanquishing sword and Sky Scorpio sword, one on the left and one on the right, casually slashed out. Two congealing water sword energies pierced through space and bombarded Beard King and Iron Arm King's bodies with a speed far exceeding theirs. Beard King's figure paused. He lowered his head and saw a huge hole in the upper-grade half-supreme grade armor on his chest. His heart had been smashed into nothingness, and a bloody hole had pierced through his chest. Iron Arm King's defense was much stronger than Beard King's, but he was also gravely injured and on the verge of death. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels had almost all collapsed. Undying body only allowed him to regrow broken limbs, so how could he endure congealing water sword containing King Greijin Yuan? He should be proud of himself for not dying immediately. Of course, the power of Yi Chen's congealing water sword was partially offset by the spatial barrier. Otherwise, Iron Arm King's fate would have been the same as Beard King's. Die! Another sword light swept out, and Iron Arm King followed in Greybird King's and Beard King's footsteps. Hey! Undying Body's realm has increased again. After killing Iron Arm King, Yi Chen could sense that his understanding of Undying Body had deepened once again. This kind of deepening came naturally. The moment he broke through to life and death realm, Yi Chen had a deep understanding of life and death. The other tribulation takers were the same, but not as much as Yi Chen's. Undying Body broke through from early flesh derivation realm to mid-stage before stopping. His comprehension was insufficient. Good, seems like we're done for this time. Only at this time did the masked man wake up from the injury to his soul. His complexion was extremely pale, without any luster, and he spoke with a gloomy and venomous expression. Those who kill will always be killed. You should be clear on this point. Yi Chen was still absorbing the Yuan Qi from the Yuan Qi ball. The king-grade Jin Yuan in his body was growing more and more abundant. Not fearing that the masked man would escape, he didn't make a move immediately. "Mph, don't be happy too early. Let me tell you a secret. 500 years ago, Battle King died at the hands of my lord, and you will not be an exception. If you pledge allegiance to my lord, he might let you go." The masked man's eyes turned as a plan formed in his mind. As expected. Hearing the masked man's words, Yi Chen finally confirmed that it was otherworldly experts who killed Senior Battle King, and the masked man's backer should be one of them. "How about it? Although your strength is higher than mine, there is still a gap between you and Battle King. A wise man submits to circumstances. Your life is in your hands." Seeing that Yi Chen didn't make a move, the masked man thought that he was hesitating. Yi Chen replied, "As you said, my life is in my hands. Therefore, if your lord wants to kill me, he will have to have the ability. If he doesn't have the ability, I don't mind washing Elysium's otherworldly experts in blood one day, leaving not a single one alive. You're courting death. I advise you to think about it. There's no need to think too much. As for you, don't worry about me." Rumble. In the end, the entire Yuan Qi ball fused into Yi Chen's body, and Yi Chen's cultivation base reached 90 years. Adding the Zhen Yuan he had recovered from half of his body using the undying body, Yi Chen's cultivation base had reached 100 years. Having just entered life and death realm and already having 100 years of cultivation base. This was definitely the first time in tens of thousands of years. What abundant Zhen Yuan! The masked man's Zhen Yuan was even more abundant than Yi Chen's, but he had just entered life and death realm. Chapter 905. As the Yuan sphere fused into Yi Chen's body, the black hole rapidly dispersed, and the third layer of sky instantly recovered. Below, Yi Chen's aura soared to the point that even the third layer couldn't obstruct him. King-grade Jin Yuan is indeed worthy of being called King-grade Jin Yuan. In terms of quality, it has increased by 5 times. Under life and death realm, even if one's talent is at the peak, it would still be extremely difficult to make up for the gap in Jin Yuan. Only a few people in 1,000 years could accomplish such a feat. Straightening his right palm as a blade, Yi Chen casually slashed. Poochie. A pitch-black crack appeared in the space, and spatial power pervaded the air. Condense. Yi Chen's space profound had reached 50% completion, allowing him to easily maintain the crack. The pervading spatial power condensed at the edge of the crack, forming a simple frame. Puff. The space's recovery ability was simply too powerful. After 3 breaths, the crack was mended, and the spatial power condensed into a frame was dispersed once again. The amount of spatial power I controlled just now was a bit less. If I had more, I should have been able to maintain it for a longer time. Shaking his head, Yi Chen's gaze once again fell on the masked man. The masked man didn't run, for he was clear that it was useless. Yi Chen's battle strength was at least upper 3 stars, perhaps even peak 3 stars. His previous battle strength was mid 3 stars, but now, it had fallen to lower 3 stars. How could he escape? Once he did, he would die without a doubt. He didn't think Yi Chen would let him go. "I'll give you 3 breaths of time. If you can escape, I might let you live." Ordinary life and Death King's soul power perception range was 10,000 li. Using some secret soul arts, they could increase it to 100,000 li. As long as they escaped the range, it would be very difficult to chase them. However, Yi Chen was different. Yi Chen's soul eyes could see everything within 1,000,000,000 li. Even if the masked man escaped to True Spirit Continent, Yi Chen would still be able to find him. Hearing these words, the masked man's expression changed greatly. "Yi Chen, don't make a mistake. I can give you 3 days to consider." The masked man was anxious. 1. Yi Chen coldly countered. "Yi Chen, you'll regret this." The masked man opened his eyes wide and roared. 2. Run. The masked man's scalp went numb. Thunder and fire burst out of his body, turning him into a ball of thunder and fire that drilled into the void. Then, he flew away at a speed that surpassed his limits, not caring about the damage to his body. Yi Chen didn't do anything, allowing the other party to escape. 3. Raising the Sky Scorpio sword, Yi Chen slashed out. A transparent ripple swept into the depths of the void. In the next moment, 100,000 li away, the masked man was directly swept out by the spatial ripple and sealed in a purple mirror, unable to move. However, his eyeballs could still move, glaring at Yi Chen viciously while cursing. I gave you a chance, but you didn't have the ability to grasp it. The reason why Yi Chen gave the masked man 3 breaths of time was to verify his usage of space profound after reaching life and death realm. He didn't really intend to give the masked man a chance. Bang! The purple mirror shattered, and the masked man was shredded into a bloody mist by the berserk spatial fragments, thoroughly dying. Space profound can disregard spatial distance within a certain range. 100,000 li is no different from a few hundred li for me. However, the prerequisite is that my soul power and Jin Yuan are strong enough. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen understood how frightening a life and death king would be once they grasped the space profound. Fortunately, his space profound was not weaker than the majority of life and death kings. The number of life and death kings with a space profound above his might be less than a handful. His figure flickered as Yi Chen dove into the void. If the space power was like a berserk blade to Yi Chen before, it was now like a stream of water, unable to break his protective Jin Yuan and injure his body. Shuttling through the void, Yi Chen found Ironarm King and Beard King's storage rings, then the masked man's. As for Greybird King's storage ring, it was in the outer space, and had been collected by Yi Chen a long time ago. Breaking through the spatial barrier, Yi Chen once again appeared above the ocean. Life and death realm is indeed powerful. But my harvest is not limited to soul power and Jin Yuan. The moment he broke through to life and death realm, Yi Chen's green lotus sword arts had already risen from low heaven grade to mid heaven grade. The speed of his Jin Yuan circulation was inconceivably fast, and his cultivation speed had also increased by 3 times. With a low-rank heaven realm cultivation technique, one's cultivation speed would be 3 times faster than those without it. In other words, other life and death kings could only obtain 1 year's worth of cultivation base after cultivating for 1 year, while one could obtain 3 years' worth of cultivation base. However, with the green lotus sword arts, he could obtain 9 years' worth of cultivation base after cultivating for 1 year, which was 9 times faster than those without a heaven realm cultivation technique. With a casual circulation of green lotus sword arts, Yi Chen could feel the surging heaven and earth yuan qi pouring into his body, rapidly transforming into Jin Yuan. Of course, the heaven and earth yuan qi was too thin for life and death realm kings. It was not as dense as when one was undergoing life and death calamity, only 1,000th of the density. Therefore, relying on cultivation techniques to recover Jin Yuan was not too realistic, and would be very slow. Unless one could find a blessed land where the heaven and earth yuan qi was dozens or even hundreds of times denser than the outside world, it would be more feasible. As Green Lotus Sword Arts advanced, Sword Domain, which was based on Green Lotus Sword Arts, also advanced. Originally, Yi Chen's Sword Domain was at the peak of the first layer. But, after Green Lotus Sword Arts broke through to the mid-heaven grade, his Sword Domain reached the second layer, and his sword rule doubled. The sword pressure was incomparably powerful. Without any exaggeration, an ordinary life and death king would be frozen in place by this sword pressure, and be at the mercy of others. After reaching the second layer of Sword Domain, Yi Chen could no longer comprehend the extent of his battle power. Of course, it was impossible for him to reach 4 stars. The gap between each star was huge. For example, if one were at the peak of 3 stars, they would be easily defeated by a 4-star king. However, there were some people whose strength was infinitely close to 4 stars even though they were at the peak of 3 stars. Such people possessed the strength of a 3-star tyrant. For example, Copper Sword King possessed the strength of a 2-star tyrant. Not a single 2-star life and death king could last more than a few moves against him. He could contend against a low 3-star king, and even if he couldn't win, he had a great chance of escaping. According to the ease with which he killed the masked man, Yi Chen estimated his strength to be at least at the peak of 3 stars. As for whether he had the strength of a 3-star tyrant or not, he would have to verify it a few more times. No rush. After entering life and death realm, I can enter the state of one with the world at any time, and my profounds will advance by leaps and bounds. Once my profounds advance to a certain level, I can no longer advance any further. Then, I can create an even more powerful sword move. 4-star battle strength should be in the bag. 4-star battle strength was equivalent to a peak king. However, Yi Chen had just entered life and death realm, and there were many aspects that he had yet to improve. This and not being able to improve at all were two different things. Open. The silver vertical eye on his forehead opened once again, and Yi Chen gazed in the direction of Blood Sky Continent. Blood Sky Continent. Iron Blood Region, Eternal Sky Sect. Yi Chen could see Li Zhongfeng, Gao Jiuan, and the rest. They were all either cultivating or chatting. There was nothing happening in the surroundings, and there was no danger. Turning his head, Yi Chen gazed in the direction of True Spirit Continent. Sky Cloud Sect and Yi family were developing at an extremely fast pace. Their numbers had multiplied by several folds, and their experts were numerous as well. Moreover, through his soul eye, Yi Chen could even see a layer of mysterious fate circulating in the sky above Yi family and Sky Cloud Sect. This fate was hard to see through even with his soul eye, and he could only see traces of it. Fortunately, there is no movement for the time being. I'll go into seclusion for a while and comprehend the profounds. After making sure that everything he cared about was safe and sound, Yi Chen calmed down. As for Dragon God Celestial Palace, Yi Chen refrained from looking. Although his current strength seemed very powerful, compared to some of the more powerful kings, he was still a lot weaker. Once his strength reached the point where he could no longer increase it within a short period of time, he would pay a visit to Dragon God Celestial Palace and see what was happening there. Being so far away, he could only see the scene, but not hear anything. Inside the palace at the bottom of the sea, a few blood-colored stones at the end of the long table suddenly dimmed. Chasing Thunder King and the rest have all failed. Was it killed by Yi Chen, or by someone else? The black-skinned figure creased his brows and rapped his fingers on the table. If it was killed by Yi Chen, then he has already broken through to life and death realm. To be able to do so in such a short period of time, his potential is bound to surpass Battle King and Xianhu. If it was someone else who saved him, then it means that he has yet to break through to life and death realm, and there is still a chance. These pieces of trash are really making me worry. Forget it, relying on these trash is useless. It's best if Horned Demon makes a trip there. This kind of genius, every day we keep him alive is one more day of danger. If we give him a few dozen years to grow, I'm afraid even the resurrection of the lords will have more twists and turns. He had no tolerance for the peak geniuses of Elysium. A few dozen years ago, they couldn't find an opportunity to kill Xianhu. After a few dozen years, Xuanho's strength was already not something they could kill even if they wanted to. Even if he personally took action, he would only have 70 to 80% chance of defeating Xianhu. However, to say killing the latter, it was not too likely. Almost no one with 5-star battle strength could kill Xianhu. The other party's mysterious Dao was something he deeply understood. His finger flicked, and a bloodlight shot out, landing on a blood-colored stone nearby. Buzz! The stone blossomed with radiance, and a blood figure with a long horn on its head appeared. "What's the matter?" the horned blood figure asked. The black-skinned expert let out a breath and said, Yi Chen might have entered life and death realm. His strength is at least upper 3-star, or even peak 3-star. We can't let him grow any further. Find an opportunity and kill him. As for whether some kings will discover our existence, we can't care so much. In any case, they have already sensed us. Entering life and death realm. Truly a big problem. The horned blood figure continued, we have the demonic power of this world, which is incompatible with this world. As soon as we appear, we will inevitably be discovered. Since you said so, I'll kill him. Don't worry, I'll quickly deal with this matter and hide in the depths. I believe they won't be able to sense too much. All right. The black-skinned expert nodded. Chapter 906. At the same time, the entirety of Elysium underwent a huge change. Not long after Yi Chen passed the life and death calamity, 7-colored heavenly flowers fell from the sky of Elysium, covering every corner of the world. Be it ordinary people, martial artists, humans, or other races, as long as they were awake, they could see the heavenly flowers falling and disappearing without a sound. In the underwater palace, 7 colored heavenly flowers also fell. Heavenly flowers falling, king is born. He has indeed entered life and death realm. A cold light flickered in the black-skinned expert's eyes as he said word by word. The horned blood figure pondered for a while, then said, after becoming a king, one can enter the state of being one with the world at any time, and form a connection with Elysium. Elysium will more or less react to it. However, not every life and death king will have the phenomenon of heavenly flowers falling. Only a few geniuses with astonishing potential who can influence the future will have the phenomenon of heavenly flowers falling when they break through to life and death realm. There are 4 levels of heavenly flowers: white flower, 3-colored flower, 5-colored flower, and 7-colored flower. The number of people who can reach 7-colored flower is less than 2 in 1,000 years. This kid can influence the future. Regardless of whether it's big or small, he must be eliminated. I'll leave this matter to you. The black-skinned expert instructed the horned blood figure once again. The blood figure said, "Don't worry, I've already contacted 9 Nether. His 9 Nether great art can reflect this kid's shadow. We'll be able to find his traces in a short time." 9 Nether has appeared. The black-skinned expert's eyes brightened. Indeed, he contacted me on his own. However, he has already changed into a new body, and his battle power has yet to recover to its peak. Haha, the heavens are helping us. Although 9 Nether's battle power at his peak is not inferior to mine, his greatest use is his 9 Nether great art. If he had appeared earlier, perhaps this kid would have already been eliminated, and there would be no need to go to war. The black-skinned expert sighed. Then, I'll take my leave first. After saying that, the horned blood shadow's body dissipated, and the light on the blood-colored stone dimmed. 9 Nether, it's been a few decades. I wonder what you've become now. If you had listened to my advice back then and kept a low profile, you wouldn't have been hunted down by the Dragon King and Xianhu. In the end, even your body was destroyed, the black-skinned expert thought. What beautiful flowers. Yi family. The 2 teenage boys and girls stopped cultivating and stretched out their hands to catch the rainbow-colored heavenly flower that was falling from the sky. The rainbow-colored heavenly flower looked like it could not be touched. It directly passed through their palms and landed on the ground, disappearing without a sound. Xiao Xiao, don't you feel that these rainbow-colored flowers are very familiar to us? There seems to be something familiar on them, the handsome youth said to the girl. The girl was still young, but she was already slender and elegant. She nodded and said, I also find it strange. The rainbow-colored flowers give me a feeling like Big Brother. Hey, you also have this feeling? The teenager was amazed. Chaotic demonic sea, Lotus demonic island. It's Yi Chen. The rainbow-colored heavenly flower fluttered in the air, bathing Murong Qingcheng. Wearing a gorgeous black robe, the beautiful demonic human emperor walked over and said, I don't know if he's your little lover or not, but if you don't work hard, you won't even have the qualifications to catch up to him. The demonic human emperor sighed with emotion. It had only been a few years since they parted, but the little ant from before had already grown into an expert at her level. Although his battle strength was still much weaker than hers, at least they were at the same level. If he was given more time, there would be very few people in this world who could do anything to him. She was somewhat glad that she didn't become enemies with Yi Chen back then. Otherwise, she would have gained another great enemy in the future. Of course, if she chose to become enemies, she wouldn't let Yi Chen escape. Teacher. Murong Qingcheng turned around and said with a trace of respect. In the past few years, the demonic human emperor had been wholeheartedly helping her increase her strength. Without him, she wouldn't have been able to reach the peak of the 3rd layer without entering the life and death secret realm. Let me tell you something. Your little lover has already been targeted by otherworldly experts. The demonic human emperor faintly nodded and said something that worried Murong Qingcheng a lot. Someone from the demons. Murong Qingcheng clenched her fists. Yeah. But, don't worry. Your little lover is still alive, which means that his survival ability is very strong. That deluge of heavenly flowers just now was most likely him entering life and death realm. So, you don't need to worry too much. Entering life and death realm as soon as possible is what you need to do. The demonic human emperor told Murong Qingcheng this matter because she wanted her to feel a great sense of urgency. As for why she wanted Murong Qingcheng to become stronger, apart from not wanting her talent to go to waste, she also hoped that the demonic human clan would have one more person who could speak for them. It would be very difficult for her to protect the demonic human clan in the turbulent future by herself. I will enter life and death realm. Murong Qingcheng heavily nodded, her bright eyes filled with determination. All right, continue your cultivation. The demonic human emperor turned around and left. Before leaving, the demonic human emperor inwardly thought, why do I have a feeling that Qingcheng can affect the fate of the demonic human clan? Could it be because of him? Shaking her head, the demonic human emperor's figure flickered and disappeared from the Lotus Demonic Island. In the depths of the boundless void, there was an unknown secret realm. In the forbidden area of the secret realm, inside the golden pond, a naked figure drilled out of the water. The golden water submerged her towering twin peaks, making them faintly discernible. Her wet long hair draped over her shoulders, making her skin look even more exquisite and fair. Extending her hands, the woman tried to catch the rainbow-colored flower. However, the rainbow-colored flower passed through her palms. Junior brother Yi, you've finally entered life and death realm. The woman was precisely Xu Jing. A joyous expression appeared on her face, and her whole body seemed to have relaxed a lot. I also need to increase my realm as soon as possible. Her body drilled down, Xu Jing once again dived into the golden pond. Her snow-white feet streaked across the surface of the water, making one's heart beat faster. The black-skinned expert could sense that Yi Chen had entered life and death realm because he had arranged this operation. Yi Xian and Yi Xiaoxiao could faintly sense that it was Yi Chen because they were close relatives of Yi Chen. As for Murong Qingcheng and Xu Jing, it was because they had an unbreakable connection with Yi Chen. Apart from them, there was another person who knew that the rainbow-colored flower phenomenon was caused by Yi Chen. She was none other than Xian Hu. The mysterious path was a very mysterious martial path. Beside the pond, Xian Hu did not catch the rainbow-colored flower. This rainbow-colored flower was the manifestation of Elysium's great Tao. It could be seen, but not touched. It was an incorporeal existence, just like the rules. Old Dragon King, you can rest assured now. Yi Chen has already grown up. In the future, he will be one of the main characters. Those otherworldly experts might have to be cleaned up one by him. Who knows, in this generation, he might be able to restore Elysium to its ancient glory. Bending down, she continued to feed the fish. Xuanho's figure blended into the scenery as if it had become an ink painting. The whole world's experts were shocked. Several decades ago, the rainbow-colored flower had appeared once. At that time, Xian Hu appeared out of nowhere and became a world-famous peak king in a short period of time. Who would it be this time? The rainbow-colored flower phenomenon lasted for a quarter of an hour before disappearing. However, nobody noticed that a black and white sword scar had pierced through the whole of Elysium, forming a connection with the sky sword at the center of Skysword Continent. The sky sword faintly trembled and let out a sky-shaking sword cry, seeming to be an angry roar. However, it had no choice but to restrain itself. In the Sea of Soul realm, one would enter the state of being one with the heavens for a short period of time with each minor realm. After entering the life and death realm, one could enter the state at any time and comprehend profounds would advance by leaps and bounds. Although profounds were harder to comprehend in the later stages, one mustn't forget that Yi Chen's soul was 10 times that of a life and death king's. In theory, his comprehension ability was also 10 times that of ordinary people. Therefore, in a short half a month of seclusion, Yi Chen's profounds had made huge progress in all aspects. First was the space profound. Space profound was one of the strongest profounds, and its difficulty was several times that of ordinary profounds. Therefore, the progress wasn't too exaggerated. However, with the foundation of 4 Extreme Emperor's Space Profound, it had also reached 70% completion. Next was the Metal Profound and Water Profound, which went from 90% completion to greater completion, only a step away from perfection. Of course, this step was the most difficult. Many people would spend decades or even hundreds of years, but still couldn't raise any of their profounds to perfection. Yi Chen's comprehension ability was 10 times that of others. Under normal circumstances, it would still take him several years or even 10 years. Next, his wood profound rose from 60% to 90%, his speed profound rose from 50% to 80%, and his shadow profound rose from minor success to 70%. Finally, even his slowness profound, which was extremely difficult to comprehend and had no reference, broke through from minor success to 50%. With the advancement of profounds in all aspects, Yi Chen's battle strength naturally rose along with it. Before, he couldn't tell whether his battle strength was peak 3-star or overlord 3-star. But now, he was sure that his battle strength had already reached 4-star. 4-star was the equivalent of a peak king. Of course, peak kings had different levels of strength. Yi Chen's current strength wouldn't be at the bottom of the 4-star kings, but it wasn't very likely for him to be peak 4-star or overlord 4-star. My space profound has reached 70% completion. I'm afraid that bewitching mirror shattering won't be able to use the 70% space profound to its limit. It's time to create a new space profound sword move. Bewitching mirror shattering was extremely powerful. Right now, it would be quite difficult for Yi Chen to create a space profound sword move that was even more powerful than bewitching mirror shattering. However, before that, Yi Chen decided to merge bewitching mirror shattering and the uncreated second space profound sword move into one sword art. This sword art would focus on the space profound. Let's call it the sky shattering sword art. Yi Chen immediately thought of a name and decided on it. Chapter 907. Sky Shattering Sword Arts and Autumn Water Sword Arts. These two sword arts used the space profound as the core, while the metal and water profound as the core. They were also the three profounds that Yi Chen would cultivate in the future. As for vibrational sword arts, it was a bit unique. It could be considered a skill-based sword art. The first style, Sky Cutting Sword, walked the path of vibrational power. The second and third styles would only become more and more powerful, which was equivalent to the evolved version of Sky Cutting Sword. Wanting to create the second style of Sky Shattering Sword Arts was much more difficult than creating the second style of Autumn Water Sword Arts, Congealing Water. Space Profound was one of the strongest profounds. 70% Space Profound was equivalent to 120% ordinary profounds. What kind of sword art could perfectly accommodate 70% Space Profound? Yi Chen had no idea. He could only take it one step at a time. Who knew? He might have some new inspiration along the way. Bewitching Mirror Shattering first seals and then kills the enemy, which actually weakens its lethality. The second style should focus on its lethality. Yi Chen soon determined the path of the second style of Sky Shattering Sword Arts. But before that, I'll first restore my cultivation base to its peak. It was too difficult for Life and Death Kings to restore Zhen Yuan. The Zhen Yuan of a Life and Death King was 10 times that of a high-level half-step king, and 5 times that of a peak third-layer Life and Death Chamber. The purity of Zhen Yuan was frighteningly high, and the conversion rate of Heaven and Earth Yuan into Zhen Yuan was naturally very low. On the other hand, the cultivation base of Life and Death Kings was at least dozens of years, and at most hundreds of years. Taking Yi Chen for example, his Zhen Yuan was a dozen times more than before, reaching 100 years of cultivation base, not to mention those Life and Death Kings with hundreds or even thousands of years of cultivation base. Therefore, if Life and Death Kings wanted to quickly restore Zhen Yuan, they could only rely on external objects, such as supreme-grade spirit stones or Zhen Yuan crystals, or even find a blessed land. In this half a month, Yi Chen had always been in the state of being one with the world. He didn't deliberately circulate Green Lotus sword arts to refine the Heaven and Earth Yuan. Therefore, his Zhen Yuan hadn't completely recovered yet. Taking out a huge pile of supreme-grade spirit stones, Yi Chen began refining them. 10,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. After spending a total of 200,000 extreme rank spirit stones, Yi Chen's cultivation base had finally reached the 100-year level. He then continued to circulate his Green Lotus sword spell, completing 108 great circulations, imprinting his own Jin Yuan with his own aura. In the future, as long as he didn't lose too much of his cultivation base, he would still be able to recover quickly. After cultivating for 100 years, Yi Chen did not stop. 2 million Jin Yuan crystals flew out of the storage ring, piling up in front of Yi Chen like a small crystal mountain, dazzling. These Jin Yuan crystals did not reach the standard of low-grade Jin Yuan crystals. 5 of them were equivalent to 1 low-grade Jin Yuan crystal. However, they won in quantity. If he wanted to increase his cultivation, he would need to have a strong mental state. Mental state included control. Without enough control, even if you had so much cultivation base, you wouldn't be able to control it. And, the Jin Yuan that couldn't be controlled would automatically dissipate, unable to be stored in the body. However, treasures that could increase cultivation base were few and far between. Everyone could increase their cultivation base slowly, so there was no situation where they couldn't control it. As time passed, Yi Chen's cultivation base increased rapidly. 110 years of cultivation base. 120 years. 150 years. 2 million Jin Yuan crystals had increased Yi Chen's cultivation base to 150 years. However, Yi Chen didn't feel the slightest burden. His mental state seemed to be able to control more Jin Yuan. Jin Yuan crystals had been used up, and supreme-grade spirit stones had been used up by 200,000. Right now, he only had 850,000 supreme-grade spirit stones left in his storage ring. Although supreme-grade spirit stones were not as precious as low-grade Jin Yuan crystals, they still had a third of the effect. 850,000 of them were enough to increase his cultivation base by 30 years. I'll refine them first. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound, Yi Chen prepared to turn the remaining supreme-grade spirit stones into his own cultivation base. In the end, Yi Chen's cultivation base reached 180 years, and he only had 130,000 supreme-grade spirit stones left. Yi Chen didn't intend to use them all. He wanted to keep some in his hands. Who knew, they might come in handy in the future. Supreme-grade spirit stones were the common currency among life and death kings. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen stood up and stretched his body. Now, it's time to create the second style of sky-shattering sword arts. Creating sword moves was different from comprehending profoundness. Comprehending profoundness was comprehension, while creating sword moves was application. Comprehending profoundness and not being able to use it was useless. Comprehending profoundness and being able to use it was the martial way, the sword way. The great Tao was formless, but the martial Tao and sword Tao were tangible. 9 Nether, I haven't seen you for dozens of years, but you're getting younger and younger. In the depths of the void, 2 black figures stood there. One was a ferocious-looking man with a horn on his head and a height of more than 3 meters. The other was a youth who looked to be only 15 years old. However, his eyes were blue and captivating, making it difficult for others to look at him directly. The youngster smiled. Horn Demon, you've been hiding in the dark for so many years. Don't you feel bored? Although bored, it's very safe. Not necessarily. I heard you've already changed several strongholds. How many is it this time? Although I've lost my main body and changed to a new one, the rules of Elysium no longer reject me. Give me time, and I'll be able to recover to my peak. Even reaching 6-star battle strength is quite possible. But you only have 4-star battle strength right now. 1 Xianhu can kill you. The fiendish man gave the youngster a blow. Hihi, I'll definitely take revenge, but not now. Speak, who do you want me to find? The youngster didn't want to argue and asked. Yi Chen, you should know. It's him. No wonder, I've heard of him before. The youngster nodded. Bring me to the place where he appeared before. I need to search for his aura before I can find him. Let's go. The fiendish man's figure flashed and flew out. The youngster followed closely behind. Half an hour later, the 2 of them arrived above the sea. There were many blood-robed guards standing guard here. Seeing the fiendish man arrive, The blood-robed guard in the lead flew over and respectfully greeted, "Lord, is this the place?" The fiendish man asked. "Yes, the remains of Lord Greybird King are also here." "All right, you can leave first." "Nine Nether, you can start." The fiendish man looked at the youngster. Of course. The youngster's expression turned serious. He closed his eyes and then suddenly opened them. Nine Nether Soul Search. A blue radiance spread out with the youngster as the center, covering a radius of several hundred li. In the next moment, countless tiny specks of light gathered. These specks were all different, roughly divided into 5 types. After classifying the 5 specks of light, the youngster found the speck that belonged to Yi Chen. This speck of light emitted a sharp aura, obviously left behind by a swordsman. "That's him." The fiendish man recognized the specks of pursuing Thunder King, Beard King, Ironarm King, and Greybird King. The remaining speck was naturally Yi Chen's. Good, after collecting his aura, it'll be much easier to find him. While speaking, the youngster withdrew the blue radiance he released and wrapped around Yi Chen's aura, forming a glowing blue sphere. The sphere floated in the air as if it was weightless. Nine Nether Soul Search. The youngster shouted and spat out a mouthful of demonic energy onto the sphere. Swish. After receiving the replenishment of energy, the sphere streaked across the sky and shot into the distance. "Follow it and we'll find Yi Chen." After flying out, the youngster turned his head and said to the fiendish man, "The Nine Nether Great Art is indeed mysterious." The fiendish man praised inwardly and chased after the youngster. The speed of the sphere was increasing with every passing moment, and every 2 hours, the youngster would spit out a mouthful of demonic energy onto the sphere so that its energy wouldn't be exhausted. Almost there. Compared to the beginning, the sphere's speed had increased by 3 times. The aura belonging to Yi Chen inside was surging, as if he was a traveler in a hurry to return home. On the nameless island, Yi Chen brandished his sword again and again. Every swing followed the trajectory of the spatial fluctuation. He gradually had an idea of the second style of the heaven-shattering sword art. The profound of space was the most profound, and there were thousands of ways to use it. Following the trajectory of the spatial fluctuation would allow the sword's speed to reach the speed of teleportation. Within a certain distance, one could completely ignore the distance between the 2 sides. Once the sword was swung, the opponent would immediately be hit. If the opponent's defense wasn't strong enough, they would naturally be killed. Apart from that, following the trajectory of the spatial fluctuation could also allow the sword energy to be more concentrated without any loss. However, up until now, Yi Chen had not been able to match the path of his sword with the path of the space ripple. He had never trained any kind of teleportation martial art before, so it was naturally very hard for him to do so. He could only try again and again. Occasionally, when he took a wrong path, he would have to immediately pull himself back and start again. However, compared to the beginning, Yi Chen had improved a lot. His sword's trajectory was gradually approaching the spatial fluctuation's trajectory. Sometimes, there would be a sword that completely matched the spatial fluctuation's trajectory, and its destructive power was unimaginable. It was countless times stronger than bewitching mirror-shattering and congealing water. Why do I sense an aura that belongs to me approaching? Suddenly, Yi Chen stopped practicing and turned his head to look into the distance. Open. The vertical silver eye on his forehead opened as Yi Chen looked over. Is it this blue ball of light? What the vertical silver eye saw was transmitted into his mind. Yi Chen's attention first fell on the blue ball of light. It was this blue ball of light that contained his aura. Yi Chen's eyes narrowed. In a short while, 2 figures and a blue ball of light flew over. It's him. The youth waved his hand, and the blue ball of light dissipated, turning into blue light that merged into his body. The aura inside also instantly dissipated between heaven and earth. These 2 aren't from this world. Yi Chen could tell with a single glance that the demonic aura emitted by the youngster and the fiendish man was different from Murong's demonic aura. The former two's demonic aura was incompatible with this world, while Murong's didn't give off such a feeling. Chapter 908. Otherworldly Demons. Yi Chen was not an idiot. He instantly guessed the identity of the two. Demons were not the only ones who came to Elysium. However, otherworldly experts who cultivated demonic power were only demons, and demons were the most ferocious otherworldly race in Elysium. 2 demon kings of demons have come to find me. They really think highly of me. Yi Chen did not sense any sense of danger from the two, which meant that their battling power had not reached the 5-star level yet. If they were, the first thing he would do would be to run away, since the difference between a 5-star and a 4-star battle power was way too huge. While Yi Chen was sizing up the fiendish man and the youngster, the latter and the youngster were also sizing up Yi Chen. Something is wrong. Compared to a life and death king, this kid's cultivation base is frighteningly deep. It's at least twice as deep. The youngster's bright blue eyes seemed to be able to see through everything. His blue gaze fell on Yi Chen's body, and he immediately estimated Yi Chen's cultivation base. This estimation left him greatly astonished. Normally, 50 years of cultivation base for someone who had just entered life and death realm was already not bad. Xianhu only had 90 years of cultivation base. However, Yi Chen's cultivation base had clearly surpassed 150 years, approaching 200 years. How could he know that Yi Chen had directly refined more than 2 million Jin Yuan crystals and 720,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, forcibly increasing his cultivation base by 80 years? Yi Chen, right? Today, you will die without a doubt. But, to be able to live until now, you have some skill. The fiendish man had a pair of curved horns with spiral patterns on them. They were extremely sharp, and as he spoke, 2 cold lights flickered at the tips of the horns. Before life and death realm, you couldn't kill me. Now, it's even more impossible. Although your strength is high, I'm afraid you don't have 5-star battle strength, right? Yi Chen indifferently smiled, not fearing anything. Oh, it seems like you are very confident. Do you think that just because I am a 4-star warrior, I can't kill you? The young man's lips curled up as he taunted. Whether or not you can kill me, you'll know once you try. The young man looked at the fierce-looking man. Horn demon, we are being looked down upon. Stand guard at the side. Don't let him escape. The fierce-looking man said indifferently. All right. Crossing his arms over his chest, the young man retreated to the side. Yi Chen, before you die, you are qualified to know my title. My title is Demonic Horn. Die. The fierce-looking man didn't waste any more words. After reporting his title, his figure flashed like a black lightning bolt, instantly closing in on Yi Chen, and punched out. Magic Fist. It was the same demonic race martial skill as Murong Qingcheng, but in the hands of the fiendish man, the demonic power was compressed to an even higher degree. With a single punch, a straight path appeared in the space, and the fist energy spread out in all directions. Ang! The Sky Scorpio sword in Yi Chen's hand trembled, emitting an ear-piercing sound. Yi Chen raised his sword to meet the attack, using vibrational sword arts. With a 5th-step spirit body and a life and death king's control over Jin Yuan, the might of vibrational sword arts at this moment exceeded Lan Sanmei's annihilation chop by countless folds. Space-shattering. Rumble. The fist and Sky Scorpio sword collided, and the two were sent flying back. 4-star battle strength. The fierce-looking man cried out in alarm. No wonder you are so arrogant. Turns out your battle strength has reached 4-star. The young man was also somewhat astonished. 4-star battle strength was not that easy to reach. According to this world's classification of strength, one would be a peak king. However, there were not many peak kings in Elysium, and each one was famous. Mid 4-star battle strength, not bad, not bad. Unfortunately, it is still not enough. The killing intent in the fierce-looking man's eyes intensified. That punch just now could easily injure a low 4-star king. For Yi Chen to receive it, his battle strength had clearly reached mid 4-star. Let's see if you can receive this punch or not. The fiendish man shouted and threw another punch. The fist energy brought with it a violent phantom of a demonic dragon. It shook its head and wagged its tail, and its claws and teeth were sharp. It was not hard to imagine that this demon race martial art was above the demonic power fist. It was the unique skill of the fiendish man. Yi Chen neither retreated nor dodged, and once again raised his sword to meet the attack. This time, he used congealing water. Before his profound improved, Yi Chen's battle strength was at most a 3-star tyrant. However, after his space profound reached 70% completion, and his metal profound and water profound reached greater completion, his battle strength had clearly reached mid 4-star. If not for congealing water, which prevented him from bringing out the full might of his metal profound and water profound, Yi Chen's battle strength would have continued to increase. Peng! The demonic dragon phantom collided with the extremely condensed sword energy. The demonic dragon phantom crumbled inch by inch, and Yi Chen's congealing water sword energy also dissipated like smoke in thin air. Both sides were still evenly matched. Horned demon, bring out your true skill. This kid's strength is quite strange. The youngster frowned. True skill? That's fine, I've never fought with a demon king of demons. Probing is not a bad thing. Yi Chen coldly gazed at the fierce-looking man and pointed the Sky Scorpio sword downward, spitting out a purple sword light. Battle strength nearing late 4-star. The fierce-looking man admitted that he had underestimated Yi Chen. This kind of genius that surpassed Xian Hu simply couldn't be calculated with common sense. After entering life and death realm for a month, his battle strength had already reached mid 4-star, which was simply a miracle. If given some time, wouldn't he be able to reach 5-star, or even 6-star battle strength? I can't let him leave alive. The fierce-looking man made up his mind. Even if he had to pay a certain price, he had to keep Yi Chen here. Roar! Bending his back and clenching his fists, the fierce-looking man's body erupted with boundless evil demonic power. The demonic power soared into the sky, and a power that didn't belong to this world immediately collided with Elysium's heaven and earth Yuan Qi, giving rise to a gloomy scene. His body quickly swelled and deformed. Dense black scales appeared on the surface of the fierce man's skin. Bone spurs grew out of his elbows and knees. A long black tail also extended out of his tailbone. The tail was like a whip, very flexible and powerful. At the end of the tail was a triangular spike like the tip of a spear. The biggest change was in the fierce-looking man's arms. Not only were they twice as long, they were also several times thicker than his thighs. His explosive muscles were brimming with frightening power. It's a bit like the demonization of demonic human clan. Yi Chen was starting to understand why the demonic human race could turn into a demon. It was obviously a special ability inherited from the demon race. He wondered how much more powerful the demon race's transformation would be compared to the demonic human race's transformation. Swish! After the transformation was completed, the fierce-looking man's body moved and disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Yi Chen, and his fist enlarged in Yi Chen's eyes. So fast. Yi Chen was startled. After the transformation, the fierce-looking man's strength had increased by several times. Just now, Yi Chen's soul power hadn't been able to capture his movements. Clang! Raising the Sky Scorpio sword horizontally, Yi Chen blocked the fierce-looking man's fist, causing sparks to fly everywhere. Spurting out a mouthful of blood, Yi Chen retreated dozens of li. This fist had caused him some light injuries. If it weren't for the Sky Scorpio sword in his hand, he definitely wouldn't have been able to escape. Hihi, die. After the transformation, the fierce-looking man's battle power had increased by a level. Originally, he was at mid 4-star battle power, but now, he was at high 4-star battle power. Moreover, his movement and attack speed were much faster than ordinary kings with high 4-star battle power. He could completely suppress kings at the same level. Swish! The fierce-looking man disappeared once again, appearing on the right side of Yi Chen. Sword domain. High 4-star battle power, Yi Chen could barely handle it. However, he still had the sword domain, which had reached the second layer. Its sword pressure was incomparably powerful, and it could slow down the opponent. En. The fierce-looking man's movements were somewhat out of shape. Just as he swung his fist, it met with an invisible obstruction. With no time to lose, Yi Chen suddenly turned his body sideways and thrust his sword out. Sword domain made his sword extremely fast, turning it into a purple ray of light. Dream on. The fierce-looking man's fist loosened, and he grabbed the tip of the Sky Scorpio sword, holding it tightly. Whoosh! Yi Chen sneered. Activating the vibration sword arts, the Sky Scorpio sword started vibrating at a high frequency. His palm turned numb. The fierce-looking man couldn't help but loosen his hand, and Yi Chen's sword stabbed into his chest, leaving a deep hole. However, it was blocked by the bones inside. So hard. Yi Chen didn't dare to be greedy. He immediately pulled out his sword and retreated. Puff! A black hole appeared where Yi Chen had been standing. The fierce-looking man's left fist slowly retracted. He actually has a fighting ability that can compare with us demons. The fierce-looking man's face was grave. Under the situation where their strengths were about the same, they would compete in terms of fighting ability. Fighting ability included many factors, such as experience, reaction, and instantaneous choice. The wound on his chest healed. This kind of injury was nothing to the fierce-looking man. Demons' demonic bodies were even more powerful than spirit bodies. Moreover, he was currently in his transformed state, so his defense was extremely strong. Yi Chen's sword energy couldn't reach other parts of his body unless it was powerful to a certain extent. Demons are indeed frightening. Yi Chen was very clear about the power of that sword. Although it was grabbed by the fierce-looking man's palm, the remaining sword energy was enough to injure human kings at the same level. However, judging from the fierce-looking man's expression, it seemed like he didn't care about it at all. Demons were a race higher than humans, and their innate advantage was obvious. Under the situation where their battle strength was equal, the demons would definitely have the advantage, such as physical defense. His sword domain should have reached the second level. From afar, the youngster was watching the battle between Horned Demon and Yi Chen. Horned Demon's battle strength was, without a doubt, high 4-star. After using sword domain, Yi Chen also had the strength to contend against Horned Demon. Of course, the situation was still in Horned Demon's favor. Sky Scorpio sword's crystal power is about to run out. Lowering his head to look at Sky Scorpio sword, Yi Chen sighed with emotion. Before breaking through, he had been in danger several times, and had no choice but to use the crystal power of Sky Scorpio sword, greatly reducing its power. Just now, if Sky Scorpio sword's crystal power was extremely powerful, he didn't believe that the fierce-looking man would be fine. After creating the second style of heaven-shattering sword arts, I should study the sword forging technique. The supreme grade materials I have are enough to forge a supreme grade sword not inferior to Sky Scorpio sword. Chapter 909. Horned Demon, do you want me to make a move? It seems like you can't take him down by yourself. The youngster suggested. The fiendish man raised 3 fingers, 3 moves. If I can't take him down in 3 moves, then you can make a move. Right now, you just have to watch out for him to escape. As the demon king of demons, the fiendish man had his own dignity. To him, taking down Yi Chen was not a strenuous thing. Since it was not strenuous, why would he want to win by quantity? All right. The youngster nodded and did not make a move. Sizzle. Between the fiendish man's horns, a powerful electric current suddenly surged out. The 2 sharp horns with spiral patterns seemed to be electrified, glowing and heating up. With Horned Demon as his title, the pair of curved horns on the fiendish man's head were naturally extraordinary, containing a powerful demonic power. The demonic power flowed back into the fiendish man's body, and his demonic aura immediately doubled. The black scales on his body also faintly turned red, as if they had been roasted by fire. Demonic dragon battling heaven's secret art. The fiendish man roared as he pulled his right fist to the back of his head and abruptly punched out. A huge black dragon phantom roared as it charged towards Yi Chen, leaving a hideous crack in the space. His battle power has increased again. Yi Chen did not dare to be careless. He raised the Sky Scorpio sword, and an invisible spatial ripple swept towards the huge dragon phantom. After his space profound reached 70% completion, although bewitching mirror shattering couldn't bring out the space profound to its peak, its power had increased by several times. The moment the huge dragon phantom came into contact with the spatial ripple, it was immediately sucked in, as if it had entered another world. Roar! The huge dragon phantom was extremely powerful. Even though it was sealed in the purple mirror, its body could still move. It swam around and struck everywhere, creating cracks on the purple mirror, as if it could rush out at any time. Crack! The purple mirror suddenly shattered, and the violent spatial fragments cut the huge dragon phantom's body, rapidly reducing its power. By the time the huge dragon phantom passed through the spatial fragments, its power was already less than 30% of its peak. It was chopped into two halves by Yi Chen's sword, turning into black air currents and returning to heaven and earth. Second move, Tyrant Dragon Fist. This time, the fiendish man didn't release a dragon phantom, but a dragon phantom that was several times larger than the dragon phantom. The dragon phantom was as big as a small mountain, and when it opened its mouth, it seemed as if it wanted to devour the entire world, bringing with it a powerful suction force. Yi Chen's clothes fluttered in the wind. He moved his feet and was pulled over by the suction force. Sword domain. With a low roar, the sword pressure outside Yi Chen's body increased to the limit, contending against the dragon head's suction force. At the same time, he slashed 3 times on the dragon head's body. Clang clang clang. 3 deep sword scars appeared on the front of the illusory dragon head. At such a close distance, Yi Chen's vibrational sword spell had an unimaginable power. However, the illusory dragon head was not a normal demon race martial art, as its structure was very reasonable. Yi Chen's vibrational sword power could not completely tear apart the illusory dragon head. Who? The suction force increased, and Yi Chen's entire body was sucked into the dragon head's mouth. Success. Seeing this, the fiendish man slowly let out a breath of turbid air. Yi Chen's difficulty was beyond his expectation. Fortunately, although his battle prowess was at the peak of 4 stars, when he used the Horn of Demons ability, it didn't reach the peak of 4 stars. However, this was because he forcefully entered Elysium and his body was injured. Outside of Elysium, his battle prowess was at the peak of 5 stars. The martial art of the demons that he created was very exquisite. Horn of Demon, I didn't expect your Tyrant Dragon Fist to become so exquisite. In the past, you weren't someone who liked details. The youth was slightly surprised and smiled. The fiendish man said, entering Elysium by force, we were all severely injured. It's fine if our battle prowess is high, we can make up for the lack of details. But now that our battle prowess has dropped to 4 stars, we naturally need to ponder on the details. How can we better display our battle prowess without any flaws? That's true. However, your Tyrant Dragon Fist still can't kill him. The youth glanced at the dragon head's image that was still charging at him and said, Tyrant Dragon Fist has a perfect spiral inside, which can consume a large amount of his Zhen Yuan. With his less than 200 years of cultivation, he won't be able to last long. The fiendish man was very confident in his Tyrant Dragon Fist. Perhaps it couldn't do anything to those with slightly higher battle prowess than him, but it was definitely the nemesis of those with lower strength. Kai. Just as the fiendish man was speaking, a glowing crack suddenly appeared on the dragon head's image. In the next instant, the crack expanded, and a human figure jumped out. Impossible. The fiendish man's eyes froze. The arrangement of the Tyrant Dragon Fist's demonic power was very tight. It was hard to destroy it from the outside, not to mention from the inside. Without exaggeration, if a peak 4-star king was accidentally sucked into the dragon head's image, they wouldn't be able to come out for a while, not to mention Yi Chen, who only had a high 4-star battle prowess. Nothing is impossible. Don't forget that he is the most outstanding genius in the last 10,000 years. Anything can happen to him. The youth squinted his eyes, and a blue light condensed into 2 beams of light. You take a sword of mine as well. After splitting apart the dragon head's image, Yi Chen's figure extended, and his clothes fluttered in the wind as he slashed at the fiendish man. The sword aura was light as a feather, without any trace of smoke or fire. Swoosh! The fiendish man was immediately hit by the sword, and a deep sword wound appeared on his chest. His left arm was also severed by the sword chi, which then turned into a bloody mist. Sky-shattering sword ART's second style, orbit kill. To be more precise, it was an incomplete orbital kill. The complete orbital kill allowed the sword's trajectory to coincide with the spatial ripples, making the sword move as if it was teleporting. Its power and speed were both perfect, without the slightest loss. However, Yi Chen had yet to reach such a realm. He could only make the sword's trajectory follow the spatial ripples as much as possible. Even so, it was still enough to tear apart the dragon head's image and instantly injure the fiendish man. Without this incomplete orbital kill, as the fiendish man had said, Yi Chen's Jin Yuan would have been consumed by the tyrant dragon fist, and he wouldn't have the slightest strength to counterattack. Only when the fiendish man's left arm was severed did the fiendish man and the youth react. Ah! Like a wounded wolf, the fiendish man roared with a sinister expression. What a frightening sword art! The youngster sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect that Yi Chen had already started to create even more powerful space-profound sword moves. Creating a profound martial skill was not something that could be done in a day or two. Although a king who had just entered life and death realm would have a huge improvement in their profounds, creating a profound martial skill that suited them would require at least a few years, or even decades. Of course, life and death kings had a lot of time, and this amount of time was nothing. However, Yi Chen had only entered life and death realm for a month, yet he was already researching a new space-profound sword move. How could he not be astonished? The other party's creation ability was simply monstrous. What a pity! Yi Chen shook his head. Just now, he actually wanted to chop off the fiendish man's head. However, the sword's trajectory didn't coincide with the spatial ripples, resulting in a slight deviation. It should be known that space was extremely mysterious, and a slight deviation could lead to a great loss. It was already not easy for Yi Chen to control the deviation to within 1 meter. Forget it, they are demons. Let's probe a bit more. In the future, when I fight other powerful demon kings, I'll know myself and the enemy better. Demonic beasts, demonic humans, and half-beasts. Yi Chen was very clear about their abilities. However, he knew very little about the demons that weren't from Elysium. Therefore, this battle was not a meaningless one. As his flesh wriggled, the sword wound on the fiendish man's chest and his missing left arm rapidly healed. Raising his head, he looked at Yi Chen with a cold and merciless expression. "Nine Nether, let's kill him together," the fiendish man said to the youth. The youth smiled. "It's just 2 moves. If he wasn't a genius from Elysium, I wouldn't mind fighting with him. But now, it's better to kill him as soon as possible. Our aura has been spread out by the will of heaven and earth. Soon, the experts in this world will be alerted." The fiendish man was very calm and didn't fly into a rage. "Hehe, horned demon, why don't you work for me? Blackstone's strength wasn't stronger than mine. In terms of some methods, he's not as good as me. If you follow me, I can guarantee that you'll get more than him." The youth admired the fiendish man's cautious character and had the intention to recruit him. The fiendish man curled his lips. "Let's kill him first." For him, Nine Nether was a madman. It was safer to follow Blackstone. But now, he naturally couldn't reject Nine Nether's recruitment, lest the other party caused trouble. "All right, I know you don't want to follow me, but I will let you know who is better to follow." The youth seemed to have seen through the fiendish man's mind and didn't care. "You want to join hands to deal with me? Seems like I have to go." Yi Chen didn't think that he could fight against the 2 of them together. Even a peak 4-star king wouldn't be a match for the 2 of them. Only a 4-star tyrant would be able to defeat them. Tyrant Dragon Fist. Nine Nether Heaven Lock. The fiendish man and the youth attacked without hesitation. One blasted out a huge dragon head phantom, and a suction force appeared. The other drew a circle with his hands, and a blue light flooded the sky and sealed the space. One inside and one outside, perfectly coordinated. Obviously, they had worked together before and weren't unfamiliar with it. Unfortunately, even though they attacked fast, Yi Chen was even faster. His body flashed as Yi Chen's whole body merged with the space. Before the blue light disappeared, Yi Chen's speed was unbelievably fast, as if distance didn't exist. Not good, he has already used the space profound in his movement art. It will be hard to trap him. The youth's expression changed as he chased after Yi Chen. Isn't your 9 nether heaven lock very powerful in sealing enemies? The fiendish man was anxious. No, although the 9 nether heaven lock also contains the space profound, it needs a long time to seal an enemy with a powerful space profound. The two followed closely behind Yi Chen, one in the front and one in the back. However, Yi Chen's space profound had reached 70% completion. As he moved through the void, the space power became his driving force, increasing his speed. Soon, the two of them lost sight of Yi Chen. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.